Chapter 512. They talked with fervor and assurance, as if they were very interested in the great Mountain King. Their words were out of control, and their saliva was flying everywhere. When the woman saw Yun Nuoxing's eyebrows twitch, she seemed to have a helpless expression. Only then did she hurriedly press down on the others. She chuckled and said, "We are from Qingshan City. My name is Yi Qing. How should I address you?" "Yuan Xing. These are my good friends," Yun Nuoxing said softly. Hearing this name, Yuan Shi's cheeks trembled, but he did not say anything. He laughed sinisterly in his heart and transmitted a message. "Brother Yuan, I'll hit you," Yun Nuoxing said disdainfully. "You're all unfamiliar. The more famous cities within a radius of 10 million miles are Mountainous City, Qingshan City, and Juyin City. Brother Yuan, which city are you from?" "We're not from these three cities. We just heard that there's a secret realm here, so we came to take a look." "What's inside the secret realm?" Yun Nuoxing did not explain too clearly and said casually. The young man seemed to want to say something, but Yi Qing could see that Yun Nuoxing did not want to reveal his identity. She quickly said, "Some important people speculated that besides treasures, there are also footprints left behind by some high-level gods. There are many unknown secrets, and it's an unpredictable place. Things left behind by high-level gods are being explored by some half-immortal and half-demonic level people. Why don't they just let beginner, god-level experts go?" Yun Nuoxing was a little stunned. Because once you surpass the demonic level, you can't enter the secret realm. Even the direct descendants of the Mountainous sect who have the key are the same. The highest realm allowed to enter seems to be the demonic level 9 transformation. No one a higher realm has entered, Yi Qing said softly. Yun Nuoxing glanced at the people gathered around. Indeed, most of them were young men. Most of them looked like they were in their 20s, but their actual ages were probably between 20 and 40 years old. Some of them had extraordinary temperaments, while many of them were very ordinary. Most of them were at the 3rd level of the immortal level. Yun Nuoxing only saw 2 or 3 of them who were at the 7th, 8th, and even 9th level of the immortal level. Just as Yun Nuoxing was sizing up his surroundings, a fiery red figure galloped over from afar. It was the arrogant person who was riding on the flaming magical beast just now. However, at this time, the magical beast was gone. It was probably either lost or killed by him. A young man on Yi Qing's side followed Yun Nuoxing's gaze. When he saw that person, his expression changed slightly, and he said in a low voice, "Langou's Mountain City's demon king. Half of his bloodline is of the fiery demonic wolf. It's said that he broke through the 5th level not long ago." "Ian, a demon." Yun Nuoxing's eyes flashed. For some reason, she thought of the demon she saw in Divine Sky City. That flirtatious young man with 2 pointy ears. At this moment, a few elegant men walked out from the group of mountains. Their handsome faces were filled with resoluteness, and their bodies exuded a sense of heaviness. However, when they walked, they were very light and did not make any sound at all. His earth element has been cultivated to a very pure level, but it's still not as good as Shan Ren's. Jin Ying's beautiful eyes flashed. Then she looked at the youngest boy among the 9 of them. After these men appeared on the stage, many people immediately cast their gazes over. Some of the young women's beautiful eyes even flashed with extraordinary splendor. "Everyone, please." The men spread out from the middle and stood on both sides. One hand was behind their back. The other hand made an inviting gesture. They pointed to the main hall and called out softly. The crowd couldn't hold themselves back when a few of them appeared. Now that the few of them had spoken, they swarmed in. Thousands of people's footsteps rose and fell, causing the earth to tremble. Yi Qing and the others also followed the army and squeezed in. When Yun Nuoxing saw this spectacular scene, his eyebrows twitched. He took a few steps back and pulled Feng, and Yishi over. He didn't want to be squeezed in the crowd. Only when the 1,000 or so people had all entered did he leisurely lead the crowd to the entrance of the main hall. What a rich earth element. When Yun Nuoxing and the others passed by the few young men, one of their hands trembled slightly. They looked at the youngest young man with a surprised look. They were all core disciples of the mountain sect and had cultivated earth element for many years. Now they saw that the earth element in this young man's body was even richer than theirs. In the past, they had received many people who cultivated earth element, but they were all much weaker than them. Of course, they were surprised, but they didn't pay much attention to it. After being surprised for a while, their eyes returned to normal. Inside the mountain sect, they walked along a long corridor and passed through many tall doors. After a few turns, they arrived at a very spacious place. There were dozens of courtyards and pavilions in picturesque disorder. Between the courtyards and the pavilions was a forest. It was very primitive, and there were many small paths leading to other places. At the very front, there was a very tall pavilion. On the pavilion, many people stuck their heads out and looked down. Many people had a playful look, and some people even poured a cup of wine for the people below. Another 1,000 people. The mountain sect gathers people to enter the secret realm once every 3 months. Every time, there are many people who come, but there are no more than 300 people who stay. Brat, the trial is dangerous. You may lose your life. Haha. This daddy has entered and exited so many times, but I haven't been able to get any benefits. The people who enter the secret realm are all a group of ruthless people. If you don't want to lose your life, quickly give up. Many mocking and unrestrained laughter came from the pavilion. Some people seemed to have entered many times and gathered here as if they were frequent visitors. Yin Nuashing opened his evil spirit eye and looked at a distant place. There was a large hall built on top of a mountain. A stone staircase wound up from the foot of the mountain and went around several mountains before finally connecting to the entrance of the large hall. Faintly, one could see that the space was slightly distorted. Brother, let me ask you something. Yin Nuashing patted the shoulder of a mountain sect disciple, then pointed at a distant place and asked, "What is that large hall on top of the mountain for? Is this your first time here?" That disciple looked at Yin Nuashing with some surprise, as if he was very surprised that it was their first time here. Seeing Yin Nuashing nod, that disciple said, "That large hall is where the monarch resides. However, it is also a cultivation pavilion. The monarch resides at the top of the large hall. Ordinary people can't go there, but anyone can enter the cultivation pavilion, as long as you pass the staircase below." That disciple smiled sinisterly, causing Yin Nuashing to smile bitterly. He was afraid that there would be another trial before he could go up. Moreover, after entering, he would probably have to become a disciple of the mountain sect. However, Yin Nuashing soon realized that he was wrong. That disciple continued. The Million Staircase is a trial called the Heart Inquisition. Although there is no restriction on the realm, it is still difficult for ordinary people to go up. Even in the army of the secret realm, there are some people who are aiming for the staircase. Moreover, even if they successfully enter, they won't force you to join the mountain sect. It must be very difficult. Yin Nuashing nodded. Of course it is difficult. It is difficult for people who don't have a strong foundation to step onto the 100,000 staircase. If you can enter, that is your ability. If you can't enter, then you have to work harder. That disciple spread out his hands and said. Yin Nuashing nodded. If he had time, it would be good to go up and take a look. Even if he didn't pass, he wouldn't lose anything. He was also curious about what was up there. Moreover, for a dignified high-level god to reside at the top of the cultivation pavilion, it was quite leisurely and elegant. Brother Shui, we finally made it this time. We didn't gain anything from the previous trip to the secret realm, and we were late for 3 months. This time, we must comprehend it well inside. You still say that if your brother Yufeng didn't dawdle for half a day and insist on buying that damn Heaven Demon elixir, why would we be late 3 months ago? In the end, we bought a F** King defective item and almost got ourselves killed. Hey, didn't we agree not to mention that? Shuaigu, you are too mean. F** we bought a defective high-quality elixir with 50,000 kilograms of high-quality glazed crystals, and we can't mention it. A few gasps came from behind. One person was swearing, and the other two were laughing bitterly, as if they were being taught a lesson. Hearing this voice, especially that name, Yun Nuoxing's body trembled slightly. The others turned around, and Lang Ao's pupils shrank. These guys were all here. Looking up, it was a group of people with the same temperament. There were 2 men and 2 women, and their silhouettes were somewhat similar. Perhaps they were 4 siblings. The man was extraordinarily handsome, with fair skin and a handsome face. If they didn't speak, at first glance, they might have been mistaken for girls. The other 2 girls were even more stunning. One of the girls was dressed in snow-white clothes, and her pretty face was quiet and playful. A long silver sword hung from her waist, swaying gently as she ran. The other girl wore a white veil, but from the faintly discernible silhouette, one could tell that she was an extremely beautiful girl. Both of them emitted a holy aura, as if they were fairies who had fallen into the mortal world. People from the Morong family. I didn't expect people from the Divine Land to come. The Divine Land is very far from here. I didn't expect this secret realm to be so attractive. This aura is at least at the 6th level of the immortal realm, or even the 7th level. That imposing young man is at the 8th level of the immortal realm. These 4 people are already guaranteed to enter the secret realm. People from the Divine Land come. The pressure is great. The people who came were actually Morong Shuege, Morong Shiweching, and the others whom Yin Nuoxing met in Yuyan City. It had been nearly 10 years since they parted, and he didn't expect to reunite here one day. Jining and the others were also a little surprised. 10 years had passed in a flash, and everyone's temperament and appearance had more or less changed. Even when Shuege and the others walked past them, they didn't immediately recognize them. However, they weren't in a hurry to reunite with them. They all looked at Yin Nuoxing, thinking that this guy would probably reunite with them. Seeing that Shuege was still scolding Yufeng and didn't notice their presence at all, Yin Nuoxing's mischievous heart skipped a beat, and a bewitching smile appeared on his face. Soon after, under the astonished gazes of Yuan Shi and the others, and the watching eyes of Jin Ing and the others, he quietly walked out and even concealed his aura. Shuege and Xueqing stood at the back, and Yufeng and Shuege had their backs facing them. They didn't notice that a young man was quietly approaching them. Yin Nuoxing quietly walked behind Shuege and Xueqing. He stretched out his hands, flicked his index finger, and suddenly pressed it against their backs. He moved his head closer and said with a rather playful smile, "This is a robbery, don't move, and don't scream." Suddenly, something pressed against their backs, and Shuege and Xueqing trembled, especially when they felt the faintly discernible energy aura surrounding that thing. Their expressions changed slightly. It was as if they didn't expect that someone would kidnap them in public. "Sir, we don't seem to have offended you, right?" Xueji's expression darkened slightly, and he didn't dare to call out to Yufeng and Xueqing. He only transmitted his voice in a low voice. "You did. How could you not have offended me? Let me think. You're blocking my way, that's right." Yin Nuoxing grinned and teased. Shuege and Xueqing's faces darkened. "What do you mean by blocking your way?" This place was so spacious that hundreds of people could run side by side. However, the strange thing was that they didn't feel any malicious intent from the person behind them. It was as if the person was taking liberties with them. "Then what do you want?" Shuege frowned slightly, and his handsome face looked a little strange. He exchanged a look with Xueqing, and the latter understood in her heart. Her smooth chin trembled slightly. Yin Nuoxing almost couldn't hold back his laughter, but he still said seriously, "How about this? Let's make a bet. If Fairy Shui smiles later, then you'll leave with me. If she doesn't smile, then you'll still have to leave with me." Smile? What the hell? At this moment, Shuege and Xueqing's hearts were breaking down. They wanted Yufeng and the others to turn around, but they were worried that they would be killed when they discovered them. Although they had a way to escape, the success rate was only 50%. If they didn't succeed, they might even lose their lives here. How about it? Do you think the bet is unfair? However, I still have the same condition. When I count to 3, you'll turn around. Don't make any noise. Yin Nuoxing chuckled softly again. Shuege and Xueqing's expressions changed slightly, but they gritted their teeth fiercely. Xueqing's jade-like hand was already holding onto the silver longsword. 3. Shui Ji's expression froze. This guy isn't even letting us negotiate? 2. 1. After Yin Nuoxing counted to the last, he loosened his grip. Then, 2 afterimages came flying at his face. One was a fist, and the other was a longsword. Yin Nuoxing chuckled and jumped back, dodging the 2 attacks. At this moment, Shui Gu and Shui Qing also turned around. Yu Feng and Yu Jing, who sensed the commotion, also turned around. Yeah. Yin Nuoxing smiled and waved at the 4 of them. Then he smiled and said, "How is it? Are you surprised? Are you surprised?" Shui Gu and the others were stunned. They looked at each other, then at the flirtatious young man in front of them. They asked in unison, "Who are you?" Buffed. Buffed. At this moment, Zian, Yaohua, and the others who had been watching the show finally couldn't help but burst out laughing. Yin Nuoxing's face darkened. Chapter 513. The atmosphere seemed to have frozen. Zian, Yaohua, and the rest who were huddled in the corner were laughing so hard that their bodies were shaking. Yaohua couldn't help but hit the wall and couldn't stop laughing. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks were twitching nonstop, while Shui Gu and the other 3 looked confused as if they really didn't know him. He couldn't help but feel suspicious. Although the 4 of them had changed a little, they were more beautiful than 8 or 9 years ago, and their voices had also changed slightly. They still had the same facial features as before. Moreover, he heard from the others that they were from the Moron clan, so there shouldn't be any mistake. Are from the Moron clan, right? Yin Nuoxing had doubts about his eyes for the first time. Yes. Shui Gu was stunned. Seeing that the other party didn't seem to have any hostility or malice, he was a little stunned and didn't know what was going on. Moron Shui Gu? Yin Nuoxing pointed at him. Shui Gu nodded. Then Yin Nuoxing pointed at Shui Qing, Yu Feng, and Yu Jing. There was no mistake. It was the 4 of them, but they didn't seem to recognize him. Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but cover his face with his hands, feeling that his world was collapsing. Shui Qing's quick-witted Mei Mao blinked, especially when she saw Yin Nuoxing's actions. She couldn't help but frown. This person was so familiar. He looked like an old friend of hers, but he didn't have such a demonic temperament, and his expression didn't seem like it either. Shui Gu and Yu Feng looked at each other in dismay for a while. Both of them were a little confused. The former briefly explained what had just happened, causing the 2 of them to have somewhat unpleasant expressions. This fellow actually dared to rob the people of the Moron family? Yin Nuoxing took a few deep breaths and didn't know what to say. He felt like he had punched cotton, and he couldn't use his strength. "Kid, no matter where you're from." Yu Feng narrowed his eyes. Just as he took 2 steps forward and wanted to teach Yin Nuoxing a lesson, Shui Qing extended her arm from the side and stopped him, making him look at the latter in astonishment. Shui Qing hesitated for a moment before taking a step forward. Mei Mao carefully sized up Yin Nuoxing, and after a long while, she asked hesitantly, "Young Master Yin?" Hearing those 3 words, Shui Gu was stunned. Even Yu Feng and Yu Jing were dumbfounded. Young Master Yin? The one they met in Yuyin City? But looking at this person, he didn't look like one. However, when Yin Nuoxing heard this, she was stunned for a moment. Then, she smiled and said, "Fairy Shui is still the best to me. After so many years, you still remember me." Hearing this disguised admission, Shui Gu and the other 2 were stunned. It was really him. Shui Qing was also in a daze. After leaving for 8 or 9 years, Yin Nuoxing had completely changed. She couldn't recognize her at all. F***CK? Brother, it's you. After Shui Gu came back to his senses, he immediately rushed to Yin Nuoxing. Just as the latter smiled, he saw Shui Gu groping his body, pinching his arms, and pulling his hair. Shui Gu even stared fiercely into his eyes for a long time. "How did you become such a flirtatious B***TCH?" Shui Gu was very shocked. Puffed. Ha! Ha! Flirtatious B***TCH? Ha! Very reasonable. Ha ha! As soon as Shui Gu finished speaking, Yin Nuoxing was instantly petrified. Zian, Yaohua, and the others in the corner were laughing so hard that they almost rolled on the ground. They all echoed Shui Ji's words. Shui Ji's description was just right. The unbridled laughter made everyone curiously turn their gazes. Shueqing and the others were also stunned. They turned their gazes and immediately saw 9 people walking out. They couldn't hide the smiles on their faces. Yao Hua even seemed to be laughing so hard that his stomach hurt. After Yao Hua and the others walked out, they immediately put away their clothes and returned to their original 9 colorful clothes. The 9 of them were very easy to recognize when they walked together. Yao Hua. When Shuegu saw Yao Hua, who was wearing a golden robe, he recognized him at first glance. Then, he was even more certain that this was Yun Nuo planet, especially when Yi and the others walked out behind the 9 people. When Shuegu and the others saw Yi Shi, they were certain that this was Yun Nuo planet. It's us, but we're now following Little Star. Yao Hua crossed his arms and couldn't help but laugh loudly. Xian walked to Yun Nuoxing with concern. She gently shook Yun Nuoxing, who was charred on the outside and tender on the inside, and asked worriedly, "Is Little Star all right?" This sentence made everyone turn their gazes. They saw that Yun Nuoxing was still standing on the spot, petrified. Her entire body had turned gray. When she thought of the 4 words that Shuegu had just described, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. Uffed. Young Master Yun, Big Brother, didn't mean it. Shueqing couldn't help but laugh and walked forward awkwardly. I'm afraid that Big Brother Nuo will be traumatized. Yishi shook Yun Nuoxing's arm and couldn't help but sigh. However, she couldn't stop smiling. After a long while, Yun Nuoxing finally recovered from her dream. She glanced at Shuegu, who was smiling embarrassedly. Her brows twitched, and she placed her hands on his shoulders. She smiled wickedly and said, "I'm going to make your dried bamboo shoot explode." Shuegu shuddered. Now that Yun Nuoxing had become so demonic, coupled with her smile, it was enough to make everyone's expression unnatural. Shuegu broke out in a cold sweat when he felt the chill on her body. However, Yun Nuoxing resisted the thought of throwing her out, which made Shuegu heave a sigh of relief. This fellow, he hadn't seen her for almost 10 years. How did her strength become so terrifying? Young Master Yun, it's been a long time. You've changed so much that we can't recognize you. Shueqing covered her mouth and smiled. Yufeng and Shuegu also smiled and came up to greet him. Shueqing, you've become more and more beautiful. Yun Nuoxing shrugged. He felt that he hadn't changed much in the past few years. Other than his hair being dyed by a divine flame, he didn't expect his former friend to say that they couldn't recognize him anymore. Shueqing's beautiful face blushed slightly when she heard how Yun Nuoxing addressed her. It made one's heart beat faster, but she didn't say anything. She only rolled her eyes at him and smiled. I didn't expect to meet you here. How have you been all these years? I heard some rumors. You seem to have been living quite well. Shuegu smiled and patted Yun Nuoxing's shoulder. That handsome smile made Yun Nuoxing want to leave a shoe print on it. It's nothing. I've been stumbling along the way. It's not as good as you think. Yun Nuoxing smiled bitterly and shook his head. The entire divine prefecture knew about the rumors, and even the entire god realm knew a little about it. The matter of receiving a divine body had too many implications. At this moment, the surrounding people finally recognized the 2 groups of people who were chatting enthusiastically. They were all a little shocked. Could that be the people from the 9 elemental shrine? That dazzling golden guy can't be the son of light, right? TSK, the big guys from the divine prefecture, are all here. The battle for the secret realm this time will be very fun. Fun my ass. All the opportunities will be taken up. Hearing those discussions, Yao Hua and the others didn't care. They were used to it. The 9 of them were a sight to behold, so it was very normal for them to be recognized. However, when it came to Yun Nuoxing, it became a radish, vegetables, and chicken stew. You guys have good eyesight. So good that you're almost blind. At this moment, a cold laugh interrupted everyone's conversation. Everyone frowned slightly. Who are you? How dare you be so arrogant? Arrogant? That person smiled disdainfully. Soon after, he said, I said that you guys are blind. You only recognized the people from the Morong family and the 9 elemental shrine, but you didn't recognize this guy. Brother, if you don't have anything to say, then shut your mouth. There are some things that we should be clear about. When Yin Nuashing heard this, she didn't care if she misunderstood. Her evil spirit eye, which contained the will of reincarnation, directly pierced through the person who spoke. That gaze fiercely penetrated into the eyes of the person who spoke, causing his spirit to tremble slightly. However, Yin Nuashing didn't use too much force. She just made him dizzy. Slightly dizzy from the weak spiritual impact, that person shook his head. His ruthless gaze revealed a hint of interest. However, when he turned to look at Yin Nuashing again, he was once again shocked by that pair of extremely cold eyes. There was actually a trace of fear in his heart. This guy, what a terrifying gaze. That person's body trembled slightly. He felt that if he reported Yin Nuashing's identity, he would probably be kept here by this group of people. Seeing that he was looking at her, Yin Nuashing was even more certain that this guy had recognized her. Instantly, her gaze became much sharper, causing that person's face to turn slightly pale. However, he didn't speak, so the situation became a little awkward. Everyone looked at Yin Nuashing and the others in confusion, then looked at the man who had an ugly expression. Are you from the Divine Prefecture? You know, so many people from the Divine Prefecture, but you even recognized me? At this moment, Yuanshi took a step to the side and blocked Yin Nuashing behind him. He crossed his arms and grinned. The young master of the Yuan family. Oh my god, this is just a small secret realm in a remote area of the Taiyuan region. There are many places like this in the Divine Prefecture, right? Why are all of you coming here to fight for a spot? The young master of the Yuan family, the future divine king of the Nine Deities Temple, and the people of the Murong family. This time, they won't be able to survive. Everyone's eyes focused, and some people recognized Yuanshi's identity, attracting everyone's attention. Many people sighed. This was just a trip to a secret realm, but there were many crouching tigers and hidden dragons. There were even people from the Divine Prefecture. When they thought of this, many people gradually lost their confidence. Yin Nuashing and the man immediately heaved a sigh of relief when they saw the shift of attention. The latter quickly pretended that he didn't know anything and quickly turned around. Yin Nuashing, on the other hand, shrunk her body and put on a hat. She didn't expect anyone to recognize her. I Ching and the others were even more surprised. They looked at Yin Nuashing and the others in surprise. They didn't expect these people to come from the Divine Prefecture. It was ridiculous that they thought they were from the remote area of the Taiyuan region. Yin Nuashing patted Yuanshi's back and didn't say anything. Both of them smiled knowingly. There was no need for words between them. Shuigu, you guys be careful too. If possible, try not to let anyone recognize me here. Yin Nuashing turned her head and looked at Shuigu and the others. Her voice was solemn. Of course. Shuigu smiled seductively. She then sighed and said, "It seems like you've had a hard time all these years." Yin Nuashing smiled and shook her head. She then licked her lips and said with a smile, "Shuiqing, you're smiling. I've seen it a few times. So, you guys will be following us later?" Hearing this, Shuiqing rolled her eyes at him. She looked very flirtatious. Shuigu and the others also laughed silently for a while. This guy was trying to trick them. However, it was good to follow them. They could catch up after they had rested. There were many things that were inconvenient to talk about now. There will be empty tokens hanging at the doors of the empty courtyards and lofts. Everyone, choose a place to stay first. The test will be held tomorrow. We will enter the secret realm in 3 days. The group of disciples from the mountain sects spoke to the crowd. Immediately, everyone spread out and walked towards the place that they had chosen. Yin Nuashing waved his hand and brought everyone to fly a long distance into the depths of the mountain. He felt that he was not too far away from the main hall at the top of the mountain. Only then did he choose a very large pavilion below. After taking off the empty tokens, Yin Nuashing and the others walked into the loft. Below was the living room. There were a total of 20 rooms upstairs. It seemed like it was used to house a group. It was just right to receive Yin Nuashing and the others. This place was very quiet. Most people chose a place very close to the loft. It was a gathering place where they could drink and have fun. However, Yin Nuashing liked the quiet. She also wanted to go to that place to take a look. Hence, she went further away. Chapter 514. Yao Hua and the others were already used to it. As soon as they entered the room, they threw themselves on the sofa and groaned one by one. They seemed to be quite comfortable. Shuegu and the others were shocked, while Jining and the other girls were a little helpless. These guys were not young anymore, yet they were still acting like this. Oh, even Yuan, she cheered as she dragged Shuegu and Yu Feng toward the sofa. Her personality as a sociable person was displayed to the fullest. Oh, Fenger saw their actions. Mei Mao flapped her hands for a while and also cheered. However, before she could rush out, Yin Nuoxing quickly pulled her into his arms and rubbed her little head helplessly. He said, "Fenger, don't learn from them." Fenger giggled and stuck out her little tongue. Then, she burrowed into Yin Nuoxing's arms and rubbed against his clothes. The latter helplessly looked at the people rolling around on the sofa and shook his head helplessly. He held Yi Shi's hand and walked in the room on the second floor. As he listened to Shuegu and the others talk about the secret realm, Yin Nuoxing thought of the million stairs to heaven. As soon as he put the two girls on the bed, the door was gently pushed open. Xian walked in. With a wave of her hand, she put away her hat and windbreaker. Her purple clothes gently covered her delicate body, but it could not cover those perfect parts. "What are you thinking about?" Xian walked to the bed and directly lay down. She turned her head and looked at Yin Nuoxing. When she saw that he was slightly lost in thought, she could not help but ask. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He looked back at her helplessly and sat down on the other bed. When he saw her lying on the soft bed and revealing the curves of her delicate body, his heart inexplicably throbbed. After stealing a few glances, he turned his gaze away. When he saw her looking at him with a faint smile, he could not help but roll his eyes and say, "I'm thinking, are you sleeping here tonight?" "Okay, I'll sleep here. Little Star can share a bed with Feng, and Xiaoxi." Xian smiled slightly, not guarding against Yin Nuoxing's somewhat dishonest gaze at all. Yin Nuoxing's eyebrows twitched, but she didn't say anything. In the past, when they went out, they would always stay in the same room to avoid any sudden approaching danger. After thinking about it, Yin Nuoxing blinked and said with a naughty smile, "Don't you like to sleep in the same bed as me?" Hearing this, Xian's pretty face turned red. She rolled her eyes and said, "Nonsense. I had no choice but to do it, and I only slept with half my body." I didn't. Hearing that her voice was getting softer and softer, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but laugh. He looked out the window. The window of this room was facing out, and he could see the mountain range and the hall at the top of the mountain, as well as the night sky that was waiting for an opportunity to make a move. After coming out of the room, Yin Nuoxing saw the malicious smiles on Shuegu and the others as soon as he went down to the living room. He couldn't help but be startled as he looked at Xueqing. The latter's beautiful eyes flickered with curiosity as she looked at him suspiciously. This made him even more suspicious. "Star-Lord Nuoxing, do you know where Yusin went?" When Yin Nuoxing reached the last step of the staircase, Shuegu suddenly laughed. When his words fell into Yin Nuoxing's ears, he stopped in his tracks and almost sprained his ankle when he took the last step. Turning around, he saw that Yao Hua and the others were pretending to be fine, but their faces were red and the hands holding the teacups were trembling. Yin Nuoxing immediately understood what had happened and fiercely glared at them. It must be this group of people who revealed that he was Xin. "Do you want to know?" Yin Nuoxing asked calmly. Now that he thought about it, he had slowly accepted that dark history. Even if he was questioned, he would just go down the dark path and say that he was interested in it. He already looked like a girl, so cross-dressing and whatnot. Let's just go with the flow. Shuegu grinned and nodded gently. He looked at Yin Nuoxing with some curiosity and expectation. That green light in his eyes made him shudder. "Is this guy gay?" "Oh," Yin Nuoxing responded fiercely. Less than half a minute after he came down, he walked up the stairs angrily. Everyone couldn't help but shudder. Why did they hear the sound of him gnashing his teeth? Xian turned around and rolled her eyes at everyone before following him into the room. She had also guessed what Yin Nuoxing wanted to do. The show is about to begin. The show is about to begin. Remember to engrave it in your mind. This might be the last time you see this scene in your life. Yao Hua said excitedly. He was so excited that he couldn't sit still. Qin Yin, Nightmare, Shui Gu, and the others all sat up straight with solemn expressions. Creak. Not long after, the soft sound of a wooden door closing could be heard from the stairs. Their expressions tensed up and they all widened their eyes. They wanted to dig out their eyeballs and throw them over there to see. A moment later, a purple figure appeared on the stairs. Her purple dress bloomed like layers of lotus flowers. A pair of slender and round calves were faintly discernible under the thin dress. Her skin was smooth and creamy, and her steps were very elegant. Looking up, a black belt was tightly wrapped around her slender waist. Her long silver-purple hair cascaded down her back, past her hips, and landed on her thighs. Her slender hands, which were as white as ice crystals, gently held onto the armrest. Her slender fingers were free of impurities and even seemed to emit a faint coldness. It was like a fine piece of art, causing everyone's faces to turn red. Even Shui Qing, who was crowned as the Snow Fairy, felt that her hands were so perfect. A flirtatious face appeared in everyone's line of sight. The silver-purple Mei Mao gave off the aura of a fairy. Her slender eyebrows were naturally curved, and her sparkling and translucent face revealed a cute and spirited expression. It was as if she was born from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The languid Mei Mao swept her gaze across everyone. Seeing that their mouths were so wide open that a pear could be stuffed in, her tender red lips parted slightly, forming an astonishingly charming arc suddenly. A demonic aura overflowed, and a voice that sounded like the cry of a phoenix slowly sounded out. "Gentlemen, is everything as you wish?" Uxin walked down the stairs, and Xian followed closely behind her. When the two walked together, their temperament and beauty were not inferior to each other. Instead, they made each other even more beautiful. After more than 10 years, the most suitable face that was transformed from Shui Yan's skin was just as Yuan had said back then. This was a girl's face. If it was said that they had some doubts back then, they couldn't even raise any doubts now. And as if in order to match Yun Nuoxing's bewitching handsome face, this face appeared even more bewitching. A slight smile was enough to turn all living things upside down. Xian was also dazzled by Mei Mao. She had seen Uxin's face before, but at that time, she saw Yun Nuoxing's true face. Now that there was a seal that sealed the primal chaos, he definitely couldn't reveal it. He could only use this most perfect face, and when he revealed it, even he himself was shocked. Seeing that everyone was so shocked that they couldn't speak, Uxin could only helplessly sigh. She touched the purple dress on her body. This was Xian's dress, and it was a bit tight. This girl was a bit too slim. She waved her hand twice, and the stunning beauty instantly changed back to that elegant and handsome face. Her clothes also instantly changed back to the iconic black clothes and black windbreaker. He didn't take them off in the first place, and directly put them on inside. My eyes. I'm blind, blind, blind. Deity King, Father, Mother, this child is unfilial. I might turn gay. After Yin Nuoxing instantly changed, Yao Hua and the group all howled. Xu Qing's pretty face also turned slightly red. She was actually a bit jealous of Yin Nuoxing just now. It was a pity that this face didn't grow on a girl's body. Otherwise, it would be another beauty that brought disaster to the world like Xian. The night was like a painting. 2 bright moons hung in the sky, sprinkling down mysterious and moving purple moonlight, making the entire world look very beautiful. At the foot of the mountain, shrouded in purple, a black figure as tiny as a speck of dust stood at the foot of the 1,000,000 steps. He raised his head to look at the moonlight, revealing a devilishly handsome face. The purple moonlight fell on him, causing the temperature of the surrounding space to rise slightly. The cool night wind blew at his windbreaker. Yin Nuoxing walked all the way to the stairs at the foot of the mountain. There was no one else beside him, and he came alone. Furthermore, he purposely chose to come in the middle of the night, clearly not wanting to be discovered by others. Yin Nuoxing raised his head to look at the 1,000,000 steps and took a deep breath. He lowered his gaze and looked at the densely packed steps in front of him. Then, He raised his foot and landed on the first step. The million steps were white jade in color, clearly not made of ordinary materials. As soon as his foot landed on the steps, Yin Nuoxing felt a faint pressure enveloping him from the sky and descending on him. However, if one looked closely, they would notice that there were tiny light particles on the surface of his body that were hard to detect. The pressure would be repelled when it came into contact with the light particles, and it would be difficult to affect Yin Nuoxing. Pressure. Has the test begun? Yin Nuoxing clenched his fists, looked at the steps at the top, and raised his foot. Little star, before his foot landed, Yin Nuoxing heard a beautiful voice with a hint of mockery in it, causing him to suddenly stop in his tracks. He turned his head stiffly, and, as expected, he saw Xian standing on the first step, looking at him with a smile. Xian, why are you here? Yin Nuoxing's heart skipped a beat. He turned his eyes away in panic, as if he had been caught doing something naughty. Xian raised a slender finger in front of her delicate red lips. She closed her mouth and looked at Yin Nuoxing mysteriously. Then, she pointed behind her, asking him to turn his gaze. However, he saw that everyone had arrived at some point in time. They were all looking at him with mysterious smiles, but no one said anything. Yin Nuoxing's heart trembled slightly. He could not help but let out a bitter laugh as he nodded his head. With a wave of his hand, he directly took a second step. His foot stepped on the stairs, and like a black shadow, he walked towards an even higher place. Behind him, a group of people also closely followed. The group of disciples from the mountain sect said that the million steps were called the self-examination stairway, and the million steps were just a rough number. No one had counted how many steps there were. The speed at which Yin Nuoxing and the others climbed was extremely fast. The pressure on each step was slightly higher than the one below, but the effect of the pressure was the same. This way, it would be much easier for people of higher realms to climb the heart-seeking stairway. In less than an hour, Yin Nuoxing and the others had already climbed over a mountain. The group moved very quickly, and they had already reached the 100,000 steps. It was only now that they started to circulate the immortal energy in their bodies. Clearly, the pressure here was already a little difficult for them. Little Star, you guys go up first. We have to slow down and be careful. Yao Hua and the others transmitted their voices. Then, without waiting for Yin Nuoxing's reply, they stepped on the stairs, and their speed immediately slowed down. However, although it was a little slow, they were still climbing up the stairs step by step. Yin Nuoxing turned around and glanced at them. He nodded and continued to fly up. Xian, Shui Ge, and the others followed closely behind. Even now, they didn't release their auras. They could still withstand it with just their physical bodies. However, the 100,000 steps were still a little insignificant to the million steps. The pressure had gradually increased to the 5th level of the immortal rank. Yao Hua and the others had no choice but to slow down. Yin Nuoxing looked up at the palace at the top of the mountain in the distance. He leaped over 100 steps, but the palace seemed to still be in the same position. He couldn't see the end of the stairs. Boom! Yin Nuoxing had just crossed the 200,000th step. The sudden increase in pressure caused his body to tremble violently. However, it was only for an instant before he regained his senses. He did not use any kind of power. The strength of his physical body could still persist. However, while he was able to remain unscathed, it didn't mean that Ziyin and the others didn't react as well. Their figures suddenly trembled at the moment they stepped onto the 200,000th step. Xueqing actually didn't have the time to release her immortal qi to resist at that instant, and a strand of unparalleled pressure directly descended upon her, causing her blood and qi to surge. Her beautiful face turned slightly red as her delicate figure was suddenly blasted flying, and a trace of blood directly appeared at the corner of her mouth. Shui Ge and the others' expressions changed drastically. They had just turned around, but before they could rush out, a golden figure shot down like an arrow. He reached out his hands and pulled Xueqing into his arms. Chapter 515. Boom! Just as his palm came into contact with Xueqing, Yin Nuoxing felt the pressure on his body suddenly increase by more than 1-fold. It was as if a huge mountain was crashing down on him, causing him to frown. With a soft shout, the power of the stars rushed out of his body and nailed the two figures in the air before landing on the stairs. Double the pressure. Yun Nuoxing frowned slightly and lowered his head to look at Xue Qing in his arms. When he saw the blood at the corner of her mouth, he couldn't help but stretch out his finger and gently wipe it away. He asked gently, "Are you all right?" The two of them flew back dozens of steps, and the sudden drop in pressure caused Xue Qing to regain her senses. Seeing that she was lying in Yun Nuoxing's arms and their faces were so close, she couldn't help but blush. Under the moonlight, Yun Nuoxing's handsome face was even more charming, causing her to be dazed for a moment. Especially when she saw the heartache and gentleness in his eyes, it caused her breathing to quicken. "I'm fine." Xue Qing shook her head in a panic and used her jade-like hands to help him stand up. Her racing heart also slowed down under the effect of 2 deep breaths, but Mei Mao didn't dare to look at him again. That flight of stairs just now directly jumped from the peak of the immortal rank to the devil rank. It didn't even cross into the half-devil rank. Yun Nuoxing looked at the flight of stairs where Xian and the rest were and said indifferently, "I felt a strange spiritual power that fused with elemental power." The fusion of elemental power and spiritual power was the symbol of a devil rank soul. A devil rank expert's elemental power, spiritual power, and spiritual power resonated, allowing them to mobilize the free elemental power in heaven and earth to attack and defend. It was a huge help, and this was also the reason why devil rank experts could unleash powerful elemental attacks, even if they were exhausted. Xue Qing smiled and pushed Yun Nuoxing with her jade-like hands. She looked at Xue Ge and the rest and said with a smile, "Young Master Yun and Big Brother, you guys go up first. I'll walk slowly below and test my limits." "Okay, be careful. If you can't do it, just give up. Safety first." Yun Nuoxing nodded and patted her shoulder. A dense wave of wood elements surged into her body, slowly calming her surging blood energy. Only then did she continue to climb upwards. Seeing Yun Nuoxing come to their side, Yuan Shi, Qin Yin, and Xue Ge all nodded and said, "Little star, you go up first. We have to be careful." Yun Nuoxing nodded, after which he looked at Ziyan. The latter did not say anything. Instead, she smiled sweetly at him, causing the moonlight to lose its splendor in an instant. Understanding the meaning behind her smile, Yun Nuoxing let out a soft shout. The reincarnation disc between her eyebrows began to circulate quietly, releasing bits of soul power and mental power. He never thought that there would be soul pressure after reaching the 200,000th step. Moreover, it was a soul pressure that contained elemental power. This time, Yun Nuoxing slowed down. With Xue Qing's example, Yun Nuoxing could not fly up directly. His body was powerful, and his mental power was powerful. However, he did not know much about Xian's strength. He had only seen a sliver of stubbornness and tenacity in her eyes one day. However, he had never underestimated her. Time trickled by slowly. This seemingly endless climb was incomparably dull and tedious. In the blink of an eye, it seemed that 4 hours had passed. Slowly, the night grew longer, and gradually it was deep into the night. The surroundings were quiet, but there were 2 figures in the large mountain that seemed to be tireless as they climbed towards the top of the stairs. At this moment, the power of the stars in Yun Nuoxing's body finally began to circulate with a roar. The wheel between his eyebrows spun rapidly, and his soul power and mental power formed a barrier, blocking the pressure from the outside world. She silently counted the approximate number in her heart. When she reached the 300,000th step, she finally stopped. The pressure here was already comparable to the pressure of a peak demon rank expert. The powerful pressure caused all the energy in Yun Nuoxing's body to surge. Her eyes flowed with gorgeous colors, and the elemental power around her surged, illuminating the night. Yun Nuoxing turned her head and glanced at Xian. However, she was slightly shocked. Xian was panting heavily. Her voluptuous chest heaved up and down rapidly. Sweat kept flowing down her white forehead, and her aura was even a little chaotic. With her strength, Being able to withstand the pressure of a peak demon rank expert was enough to shock everyone. Yin Nuoxing opened his mouth, wanted her to give up. She was already forcing herself. The 200,000 step was not far away. Once she crossed the 200,000 step, she would directly use the power of a demon rank to blast Xueqing out. Who knew if the 300,000 step would happen again? He was worried that Yin wouldn't be able to take it. No. Knowing what Yin Nuoxing was going to say, Ziyin's beautiful face slightly changed, and she quickly interrupted him. However, after yelling out those words, her breathing became even more ragged. Her jade-like hands supported her knees as she gasped for air. Her purple clothes were soaked in sweat and tightly stuck to her skin. This scene was filled with an extremely strong temptation. I want to follow behind Little Star. I just want to follow Little Star's footsteps closely. I beg you, don't say those two words. Only Little Star can't. Yin stubbornly raised her head. Her Mei Mao was filled with an extremely strong obsession, causing Yin Nuoxing to be greatly shocked. In particular, that sentence made his body tremble violently. Was she trying her best just to follow him closely? Yin Nuoxing suddenly felt that he had always underestimated this beautiful girl. He carefully protected her, didn't want her to be hurt, and hoped that she would be fine. But what was she thinking? Was she really willing to curl up under his 6 wings and accept his protection with peace of mind? Yin Nuoxing saw her answer at this moment and used her pair of bright eyes that were filled with determination to tell him the answer. Yin had the 5 elements body. It was one of the strongest bodies in the realm of the gods besides the divine body of the Na Ling god. She also had her own pride, but in front of the person she loved, she only wanted to express her pure self. There was nothing to be proud of because the person she loved was incomparably powerful. She would rather give up all her glory and give it to him. Yin Nuoxing fell silent. He nodded seriously and didn't say anything. He couldn't say anything. He didn't know that at that time. He jokingly said, "When the 5 elements body is completed, I'll let Yin rest under the shade of a big tree." These words were deeply imprinted in Ziyin's mind. She fought desperately, fought hard when Yin Nuoxing couldn't see. She only hoped that one day she could really make these words become a reality. "Let's go," Yin Nuoxing said faintly. He clenched his fists and walked up the stairway step by step. His heart ached, but he couldn't say it. That would shatter her obsession. Ziyin saw this and licked her red lips with her little tongue. She revealed a very stunning smile. Then, she took a strong step forward and followed closely behind Yin Nuoxing's footsteps. She didn't want to fall behind. Yin Nuoxing took a few deep breaths. There were a few times when he thought that he was about to reach the 300,000th step. He fiercely made his energy surge, but every time it was empty. It seemed that he hadn't reached the 300,000th step yet. It made him feel that he should have reached the 300,000th step. Boom! Finally, after a certain step, a loud sound suddenly exploded in his mind, causing Yin Nuoxing to feel a little dizzy. Fortunately, his spiritual power was strong enough. He only fainted for a moment before he recovered. He immediately turned his gaze behind him, only to find that Ziyin had disappeared. Yin Nuoxing's face turned pale. He was about to rush out when he suddenly realized that the spiritual, elemental, and power pressure that permeated his body had all disappeared. His strength was gone in an instant, and he only felt his body relax. What is a saint? What is a demon? Between a saint and a demon, who is good and who is evil? A dignified voice sounded in his mind. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. His brows furrowed tightly, but he asked doubtfully, "Everything in the world is divided into good and evil. How can it be good? What is evil?" As soon as Yin Nuoxing finished speaking, his vision blurred. Immediately, he saw 2 images. These were 2 powerful characters who could look down on the 9 heavenly layers. One of the scenes was of a sacred palace. That person stood at the top of the palace, chanting sacred scriptures and oracular chants, causing the astral rivers to tremble. He had 3,000 generals under him and was in charge of an extremely large army. They fought in the astral rivers, sweeping everything before them with invincibility. That sacred army stepped across the galaxies and conquered many ancient planets. The lofty saint army was getting stronger and stronger. Their voices were getting louder and louder. They were revered by thousands of races and worshipped by countless people. The other image was of a powerful demon god. He didn't have a powerful army or a strong reputation. He directly descended on a planet with life, defeated and drove away the strongest expert, occupied that planet, and continued to occupy more planets with life. In the end, he formed a star field that was ruled by him. The people of the star field were very afraid of him, fearing his power. A saint and a demon. The saint was worshipped by thousands of races and revered by countless people, and the demon king was feared by everyone. This scene was clearly seen by Yin Nuoxing, but he was a little confused in his heart. The saint who sacrificed countless lives to conquer a galaxy and was worshipped by thousands of races. The demon who used the most direct method to occupy a mountain and establish a prosperous galaxy was feared by everyone. There seemed to be no connection between the two, but they seemed to be telling something. What is a saint? What is a demon? Good and evil. Who is a saint? Who is a demon? That voice echoed in his mind again, causing Yin Nuoxing to frown even more. This time, he even sounded a little impatient. It's just a way of doing things. It doesn't mean who is good and who is evil. How can things in the world be distinguished only by good and evil? After he finished speaking, the surroundings were quiet. There seemed to be the sound of insects chirping in the distance, but there was no other sound in his mind. Yin Nuoxing stood in place for a while, then continued to walk up step by step. He had already come this far, so how could he give up? After walking for a long time, Yin Nuoxing finally felt a little tired. He looked back and saw an endless flight of stairs. When he looked up, there was also a flight of stairs that led to an unknown place. He was tired, and there was no one beside him to talk to. He couldn't help but sit down to rest. His eyelids closed uncontrollably, and he wanted to sleep. He had a dream. In the dream, he stood among the stars and looked down an incomparably vast continent. Although it was a little blurry, he still recognized it. It was the realm of the gods. Outside the realm of the gods, there was a huge continent. Demonic aura filled the sky, and even the ground of the entire continent was black. That was the demon world. One day, the demon world descended from the void and launched an attack on the realm of the gods. Wherever the demon army passed, they carried out a cruel massacre. They wiped out all the major forces. Countless forces were annihilated under the demon army's iron hooves. Millions of people, tens of millions of lives died, and the sky was dyed red with blood. The demon army was invincible, and they were tyrannical. Everyone who stood in their way was killed, and the people were plunged into misery and suffering, leaving behind a ruined city. Finally, the massacre of the demon army aroused the wrath of the realm of the gods. Many of the transcendent forces in the realm of the gods began to gather their strength. Armed with divine weapons and eternal divine weapons, they began to launch a counterattack against the demon army. In the face of the power of the transcendent forces in the realm of the gods, the demon army was as fragile as a piece of paper. They broke into the demon world, and an unusually vast and mighty war of destruction broke out. It was a one-sided war. The demon army kept retreating, and even half of the demon world was trampled into pieces. Nothing was left behind. The wrath of the realm of the gods poured down on the demon world. Yin Nuoxing could see that many innocent people were involved in the war. Even the ordinary cultivators were not spared. The people of the realm of the gods were unscrupulously purging the demon world. Many people didn't participate, and they directly rushed into the depths of the demon world. But even more people stayed behind to kill and plunder until the entire demon world was wiped clean. Nothing was left behind. Yin Nuoxing's expression didn't change. Seeing this scene, his heart turned cold, and it became colder and colder. When he saw the demon army slaughtering the people of the realm of the gods, he didn't feel much of a fluctuation in his heart. However, when he saw that the demon army didn't massacre the entire demon world, he was somewhat surprised, and he seemed somewhat relieved. When he saw the people of the realm of the gods using absolute power to purge the entire demon world, not even the ordinary people were spared, his heart was filled with anger. He wanted to stop them, but he was only a bystander. The scene changed again. It was unknown how many years had passed, but the demon world was still the same as before. The demon world descended from the sky. This time, the demon army was countless times stronger than the previous one. Once again, they came out in full force, aiming for the realm of the gods. This time, they ignored everything and wantonly slaughtered. Everything was the same as the realm of the gods last time. No matter what they encountered, they would be annihilated. And this time, the realm of the gods' counterattack was even more violent. When the two armies clashed, a large area was torn apart, and half of the demon world was destroyed. Even the starry sky was dark. This destructive war lasted for an unknown period of time. In this war, both the demon world and the realm of the gods suffered great losses, but they still didn't stop fighting. It seemed like they wouldn't stop until one side fell. Yin Nuoxing looked down from the Nine Heaven Star River, and his heart finally trembled a little. He saw the Yuan family being destroyed in this war. Yuan Shi and the others were mercilessly trampled by the demon army and died without an intact corpse. He saw the 9 shrines fighting to the death. He saw Jin Wang and the others fallen by one. He clenched his fists tightly, and his eyes seemed to spit fire. However, he could only watch quietly, and he couldn't do anything. In the end, he saw the 9 shrines collapse, and Yao Hua and the others were killed in battle. Their bodies were split into light particles and scattered on the shrines. Xian and the others were lucky to escape because of their beauty, but they were captured. When Yun Nuoxing saw this scene, his face suddenly turned pale, and his heart trembled violently. Enough! An angry roar that seemed to come from the 9 hells directly shattered the scene in front of him. His vision suddenly broke free, and he was still sitting quietly on the stairs. There was no war between the two worlds, no horrifying scene, and no heart-wrenching scene. Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but sigh. The anger in his heart hadn't subsided. That scene really happened in front of him, and he couldn't pretend that he didn't see it. He was angry and even furious. He was in despair, and he couldn't wait to slaughter those people. He was helpless and could only watch from outside the battlefield. Especially when he saw the scene of his brothers and friends dying in battle, his fury reached the peak, and he became berserk. At this moment, he was immersed in the scene again. It was still the war that destroyed the two worlds. He was above the 9 heavens, overlooking the entire world, but Yin Nuoxing realized that this time he could move. He was no longer a bystander, but a powerful existence that could influence the situation of the war. Yin Nuoxing was at a loss. If it was in the past, he might have chosen to ignore it, but that scene was deeply engraved in his heart. This time, he resolutely stepped down, killed the high-ranking members of the Devil Army, and repelled the Devil Army back to the demon world. He also banished the demon world back to the void and stopped the war with his strength alone. The scene collapsed, and everything was like a dream. Yin Nuoxing realized that the sun was about to set, and the sky was fiery red. A shadow appeared on the stairs in front of him, with his back facing him. Without looking at him, the shadow suddenly said, "Good and evil, saint and devil, who is right and who is wrong? Is it wrong or right? There is no right or wrong in this war. According to the standpoints of both sides, this war is inevitable, but is also wrong. A thought to become a saint, a thought to become a demon, a thought to become a saint, and a thought to become a demon. I overlooked the entire war. How many heroes died in vain? How many innocents were mercilessly slaughtered by the flames of war? Countless stars with life were devoured by the flames before they could even react. I can't see the essence of the war, but I know it is necessary. The war will never end. Good and evil exist forever, and the cycle of reincarnation will never end, corroding each other. There is no escape, no destruction. Is it right? Is it wrong? The demon world is barren, and if the devil army wants to survive, they have to conquer and plunder the land. Is it wrong for the deity's world to counterattack? They don't know the demon world, and they don't agree with the devil race. Those who are not of our race will definitely have different hearts. Both sides are naturally at odds with each other, with different standpoints and different beliefs. What is right or wrong? I have drifted away from the world, unmoved by the world, but I still can't escape from the fate of being involved in this war. But if I could choose again, I would still choose to stand in the 9 heavens and watch this war quietly with my friends. Yin Nuashing said quietly, as if he was talking to himself, but he was also talking to himself. You won't be able to protect them. One day, they will be devoured by the flames of war. As long as they live in this world of cultivation, they will never be able to escape. The shadow looked forward and said quietly, Then I will turn my body into a saint and become a demon. I will sweep away all the obstacles that dare to stand in my way. Chapter 5:16. It wasn't faith, nor was it willpower. It was just an unforgettable obsession, an obsession that was close to madness. It caused the figure to tremble slightly. After a long time, Yin Nuashing finally calmed down and said those words. He didn't know why he was so agitated, but he said those words so impulsively, as if he was filled with righteous indignation, as if he was extremely righteous. The figure sighed softly. With a slight sway, he disappeared from sight. Then, the image of the staircase disappeared as well. The endless staircase disappeared. In front of him, there were a few ancient trees inserted into the stone mountain. They grew tenaciously on the precipice. Not far away, there was an ethereal hall. Looking back, he realized that he had already reached the top. He didn't know when the 1,000,000 steps had ended. One day, he had used an entire day. He seemed to have forgotten about the test of the secret realm. However, in just one day, his state of mind seemed to have changed. Should it be said that he had improved, that he had become more determined? Little star, you're the slowest. A few giggles came from the front, causing Yin Nuashing to pause slightly. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the sound. Then he saw that at the corner of the stone mountain, more than 10 people suddenly walked out in unison. They all made funny faces at him. Brother, you're really slow. We've been waiting for 4 hours. The sky is already dark. Yuanshi laughed loudly. He walked forward and patted Yin Nuashing's shoulder. Yin Nuashing's gaze was a little absent-minded. Looking at this handsome face, there was a touch of sadness between his brows. He didn't attract anyone's attention. Then, he gently opened his arms and hugged Yuanshi tightly. This sudden action shocked everyone. Yuanshi was even more astonished. Then, he hugged Yin Nuashing gently, although he didn't know what had happened. After a while, Yin Nuashing let go of Yuanshi and walked towards Xian and the others. Looking at the beautiful girl in front of him, his heart was slightly shaken. Although he knew that everything that had happened was an illusion, he was still afraid. Yin Nuashing fiercely pulled Xian into her embrace, causing her delicate body to slightly stiffen. She could feel his churning emotions. Although she did not know what he had experienced, it must have been very dangerous. Little star? Yuanshi and the others were a little confused. Looking at Yin Nuashing's slightly dazed eyes, they were a little confused. Yin Nuashing didn't respond. After letting go of Xian, she walked towards Yao Hua and the others and gave each of them a gentle hug. However, when they saw that pair of silver-purple eyes, they were a little stunned and scared. They didn't know what to say. You're still alive. You're still alive. Yin Nuashing gently stroked Xian's head and seemed to be smiling foolishly. They had all experienced their own illusions, but none of them had such a big reaction after coming out of it as Yin Nuashing. They were curious about what he had experienced, but they didn't want to ask. However, they could all guess that it must have been a very scary illusion. Otherwise, he wouldn't have such a reaction. Child, that was just an illusion. It wasn't a part of your real life. Don't immerse yourself in it. Chasing after those illusory memories will only make you lose yourself in the maze of memories. Suddenly, a gentle voice was transmitted over, causing everyone to hurriedly turn their heads and look towards the source of the voice. After which, their gazes were uniformly fixed on the entrance of the large hall. At that spot, a pale yellow figure had unknowingly appeared. It was a middle-aged man in a light yellow robe. He looked at Yin Nuoxing and the others with a gentle gaze. It was just a lone figure, but it made them extremely vigilant. That person and that place didn't seem to exist. Even time and space seemed to be distorted and blurred. They knew what kind of expert this was because they also had experts at home. Senior, Yin Nuoxing and the others walked over and cupped their hands towards the yellow-clothed young man. No matter what, this was a super expert. Even if they were from an extraordinary background, they still had to show enough respect. The yellow-clothed man waved his hand, and a gentle breeze stopped their movements. Then, he chuckled and looked at the group of young faces in front of him. He smiled and said, "It's been many years since anyone came up to play." Unexpectedly, such a large group of people appeared at once. This old man doesn't even know how to greet them. Then, the yellow-clothed man looked at the stairs in the distance and said with a smile, "This stairway is called heart questioning. It doesn't test one's strength. That's not important. What's important is this place." The yellow-clothed young man patted his chest and said, "Only those who pass here can set foot on this mountain palace." Then his gaze paused and fell on Yin Nuoxing. His deep eyes penetrated Yin Nuoxing's eyes as if he wanted to see through him. However, there seemed to be a layer of fog in front of him that he couldn't tear apart no matter how hard he tried. Your heart is strange. Heart questioning is difficult. Your heart is strange. People who ask about their own hearts must stay true to their hearts and remain unmoved. Their state of mind is very good, and they can stay true to their hearts and break through the illusion. But from what I see, your heart seems to be wavering, but it also seems to be incomparably resolute. You shouldn't have been able to come here. Can you tell me why? The yellow-robed man's gaze was deep, as if he could see through everyone's heart. When Yin Nuoxing heard this, she was slightly startled. She thought for a while and organized her words before saying, "I don't have a heart as tenacious as others. I don't have any beliefs. I don't have any goals that I must achieve. In this world, I don't have any relatives that I need to protect. All I have is a group of stupid friends behind me. All I have is an undying obsession. It's just an obsession." When Xian and the others heard this, their hearts trembled slightly. It's just an obsession? The yellow-clothed man also fell silent. His gaze was fixed on Yin Nuoxing. The latter also looked straight at him without any fear. After a long time, he seemed to be talking to himself. Heart and beliefs don't exist because all of this has been added to the obsession. If the obsession is deep enough, it will become the original intention of the heart. I understand. It's not surprising that you can come here. The yellow-clothed man nodded. Then he laughed again. He looked at the group of young people and said, "My name is Mountain. The outside world calls me the Mountain Monarch. Come in and have a seat. There's no rush for the secret territory." Everyone was stunned. Although they had some guesses when they saw this man, they couldn't help but feel a little surprised when their guesses were confirmed. The Mountain Monarch had come to receive them just because they had passed the heart-seeking stairway. How much importance did he have? In particular, this so-called monarch had already entered the Emperor God realm. That was even more unbelievable. Although most of them came from big forces and definitely had Emperor God experts in their families, it was rare to see them. They didn't expect to see an Emperor God expert just by walking around. Of course, they were just a little surprised. They had seen Emperor God experts before. Their identities weren't ordinary, so they didn't have to be so surprised. They just had to show enough respect. The Mountain Monarch seemed to know what they were thinking. He couldn't help but laugh and said, "Do you think it's strange to see me here? The heart-seeking stairway treats everyone equally. When you reach your limit, it will question your heart. Of course, as long as you can step on the top of the demon stairway, it doesn't matter if you can continue or not. It will start to question your heart and send you to the cultivation pavilion of the corresponding level according to your answer. Although there are many people who have passed the heart-seeking stairway, there aren't many who can reach this level. At least, it's been 1,000 years since anyone has reached this level." The Mountain Monarch said indifferently, "Since you can come to the palace at the top of the mountain, you must be from a powerful Emperor God realm force, or you must have had extraordinary encounters. This has nothing to do with your character. The heart-seeking stairway only questions your heart." The Mountain Monarch's sharp eyes calmed down. He pointed at them and said, obsession, protection, carefree, strength, unity, freedom, calmness. This is your heart. The order he pointed at was Yin Nuoxing, Ziyin, Yuan Shi, Qin Yin, Yao Hua's group of 9, Shui Ge, Shui Qing, Yu Feng, and Yu Jing. You guys can go in and cultivate yourselves. Pick whatever you want and learn as much as you can. Just don't smash it. Everything depends on fate. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. I'll be sitting inside. The mountain monarch flicked his robes and let out a long sigh. He then turned around and walked into the main hall. Yin Nuoxing and the others looked at each other. Then, Yuan Shi couldn't help but chuckle. It didn't seem wrong to say that he was carefree. This monarch is also carefree. He doesn't put on any airs at all. Everyone nodded and walked into the main hall. By the way, child, your obsession is too deep. Be careful not to go astray. Once you're done cultivating, come drink tea and play chess with me. Just as everyone entered the main hall, they heard another voice coming from afar, causing them to be stunned. Then, their gazes turned towards Yin Nuoxing in unison. Obsession, it should be referring to him. Okay. Yin Nuoxing nodded. There was a long corridor in the hall, and there were many large doors on both sides of the corridor. With a casual glance, they could see that there were countless books, scrolls, and other mystical items stored inside. Although they couldn't tell what grade these items were with their eyesight, they were definitely not ordinary items. However, what made them dizzy was that there were so many things. How long would it take for them to find something suitable for them? Everything depends on the word fate. Yin Nuoxing smiled and walked deeper into the corridor. He didn't even look at the doors on both sides. Seeing him like this, Yuan Shi and the others thought of something. They closed their eyes and carefully sensed for a while. Then, they walked in different directions. Ziyin glanced at Yin Nuoxing's back and chased after him. You didn't sense anything suitable for you? Hearing footsteps behind him, Yin Nuoxing turned around in surprise. When he saw Ziyin trotting to his side and walking beside him, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. It's on the way. Ziyin smiled and stuck out her tongue. Yin Nuoxing shrugged helplessly. When he turned back, he couldn't help but glance at her. Just now, the Earth Monarch said that this little girl's heart was to protect. Could it be because of that sentence? But he didn't say it out loud. If she didn't say it, he wouldn't ask, just like how she treated him. The two walked for a while and passed through a huge door at the end of the corridor. There was a long corridor on the other side of the door. The number of doors on both sides was obviously much fewer than in the first corridor. There were only 6 to 7 doors. Yin Nuoxing came to a halt and looked at the first door on the left. After hesitating for a while, he pushed the door open and walked in. Along with a loud bang, the red iron door opened slowly as though it hadn't been moved for thousands of years. It was so heavy that Yin Nuoxing used almost all of his strength to open it. After the iron door was pushed open to a gap large enough for a person to enter, it automatically retreated to both sides. Light illuminated the dark palace. The palace was very empty. One could see the end of it at a glance. There was nothing special placed in the palace. However, there were 5 huge statues in the palace. They were so lifelike that even their expressions were perfectly engraved. Chapter 517. Several lifelike statues stood in the hall with balls of light floating around them. They were sacred and inviolable. The moment they saw the statues, Yin Nuoxing and Ziyin felt a rampaging soul crash into their heads. It was as if the eyes of the statues were enough to make their souls tremble and submit. You want me to submit? Yin Nuoxing grabbed Ziyin and gently circulated the technique of the 6 paths of reincarnation. Strands of soul energy enveloped her, calming her soul down. Her body also stopped trembling. What terrifying soul energy! Ziyin's face paled slightly. She wiped the sweat off her forehead. She did not dare to look directly at the statues. She had only glanced at them, and the statues had already released a power that was enough to obliterate her soul. If Yin Nuoxing had not protected her in time, her soul probably would have directly shattered. Even so, she was still slightly affected. Yin Nuoxing did not look away at all. Instead, he raised his head and stared straight at the first statue. This time, he could feel an even greater pressure on his soul. It was as if a huge hand was gripping him tightly, trying to strangle him to death. I've personally faced a god emperor before, and I've even faced the extreme pressure of a god emperor. You want me to submit to a mere statue? Yin Nuashing murmured calmly. The six-colored wheel between his eyebrows began to spin rapidly, resisting the pressure on his soul. Break! With a shout, a huge storm of soul energy suddenly surged out and swept through the hall. The soul energy that was pressing down on Yin Nuashing also suddenly dispersed. After the spiritual strength dissipated, the first statue also seemed to have become dull. Those light clusters that were revolving around the statue also slowly descended from the upper body of the statue and slowly rotated under its feet. If Yin Nuashing walked over, he would be able to reach out and grab it. He only glanced at the balls of light once before looking away. Yin Nuashing raised his head and looked at the statue again. The statue was hundreds of meters tall and was at the same height as the roof of the hall. It gave off an extremely powerful sense of majesty and vicissitudes. There was a huge blade stabbed into the ground beside its feet. Its face was filled with a will that looked down on the universe. Its bright eyes seemed to be able to pierce through the heavens and earth. There was a unique will that had existed with the statue for all eternity, never dissipating. Some of the weapons in Yin Nuashing's body reacted instinctively when he saw the huge blade. They faintly wanted to fight back, yet they also seemed to desire something. The might of a god artifact constantly radiated from him. Yin Nuashing raised his eyebrows and waved his hand. Immediately, broadswords and swords rushed out from his body and rushed towards the huge blade. They stopped in the void, but the might of a god artifact slowly radiated out. It was responding and resonating. This is similar to the might of a god artifact, the power of will. Are the god artifacts using the power of the statues will to cleanse themselves? Yin Nuashing couldn't help but be surprised when he saw the god artifacts slowly becoming stronger. Of course, the god artifacts didn't respect the statue either. Looking at the way they resonated, it didn't seem like they were comprehending it. Instead, they were skimming over it and plundering the unique power that the statue radiated. Yin Nuashing lowered his head and looked at the statue's name. Soul Saber, Great Emperor roamed the god world with a soul saber that could sever the soul root. He didn't respect the heavens and earth, trampled through the 9 heavens and star rivers, and killed all his enemies. He looked down on the sea of stars. He once entered and exited the demon world 7 times alone and stirred up chaos in the demon world. His invincible soul saber light was respected by the 4 realms and was recognized by all races. Vigorous and powerful words were carved on the stone wall behind the soul saber Great Emperor. Even though many years had passed, the words were still emitting a terrifying light. Through the words, Yin Nuashing could feel a terrifying power radiating out. It made his soul feel slightly uncomfortable. It was as if he was seeing the peerless great emperor of the past, 1 man and 1 saber, roaming the starry sky in the demon world alone. Soul saber, huh? The soul saber. That's why it's so destructive to the soul. Even a wisp of the statue's power is so terrifying. Yin Nuashing muttered to himself. The soul was the root of a cultivator. Nowadays, apart from some special heart sutras that could cultivate the soul, many people just let it grow with their cultivation. Even if stepping into the demon world required refining the soul power and connecting the elemental power with the soul power, that was all there was to it. Without special heart sutras, the speed of cultivating the soul was very slow. Xian, go and feel it. The remnant power of the soul saber has been erased. Now the statue is no longer dangerous. Yin Nuashing turned his head and looked at Xian. Xian nodded. He obeyed his words and walked to the statue. Mei Mao looked from the top of the statue to the bottom. Finally, she looked at the huge soul saber. Although Yin Nuashing had offset the power of the soul saber, it still made her soul tremble slightly. Xian took a deep breath and sat down cross-legged. He released his soul power and gently touched the statue of the soul saber great emperor. The latter also emitted a faint soul power. Yin Nuoxing was a little surprised when he saw the two of them responding so quickly. They entered the state too quickly. Yin Nuoxing walked to the side and looked at the second statue. It was a peerlessly beautiful woman. She was so beautiful that it made people's hearts tremble. One look at her, and they would be unable to extricate themselves. They would want to dig their eyes out and stick them to her. However, she had a fairy and sacred aura. Her statue had an indelible, noble, imperial aura that made it difficult for people to profane her. Fairy aura, it feels similar to Little Purple Soul's aura. Yin Nuoxing didn't care about the statue. She only felt a slightly familiar aura. It was the fairy aura of Little Purple Soul, Great Emperor Colored Glaze. Why isn't there an introduction? Yin Nuoxing looked at the stone wall behind her and was stunned. There were only 4 big words on it, and there wasn't any introduction of the Great Empress below. Just as Yin Nuoxing was wondering why there wasn't an introduction, a fairy aura suddenly came from the front. It made Yin Nuoxing's breathing stagnate. It was obviously an extremely strong energy pressure, but it made him feel as if he was floating in the air. Huh! Yin Nuoxing stomped his foot on the ground. The aura of a peak 9th-tier immortal suddenly rose from the ground. The blood in her body flowed rapidly, and at the same time, the light element flowed. She clenched her right hand in front of her as if she was imagining herself holding a sword. Immediately, an ethereal aura with a sacred aura rushed out of her body and collided with the fairy aura. Bang! 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 When the two auras collided, there was a series of heavy thuds in the hall. Yin Nuoxing's body was rebounded by a huge force. Both of his feet stood on the ground, and he was forcefully pushed dozens of meters away before he could stabilize himself. F*CK. It's just a statue. Can it not be so abnormal? Seeing that he had been pushed back more than 10 meters, Yin Nuoxing's brows couldn't help but twitch. Then he laughed bitterly. In an instant, he had released his strongest state. He was confident that in that state, even a 3rd Seal Demon rank expert might not be able to push him back with a single punch. However, he had been pushed back by a statue from who knew how many years ago. However, after pushing him back, the Empress statue gradually calmed down. Those light balls also gradually floated down. Inside them were some extraordinary Xian techniques and mental cultivation methods. However, Yin Nuoxing wasn't in the mood to look at them. He didn't lack these things. What he needed was something substantial that could directly help him break through, increase his combat strength, or even increase the power of his heaven-grade weapons. However, with this thought in mind, Rin Baqian still walked over curiously. When he saw the rolls of scrolls circulating around the Empress's feet, he felt a little greedy. These items that were usually not seen were placed here like cabbages. Who wouldn't be tempted? However, Yin Nuoxing still didn't pay attention to them. He looked at them a little reluctantly and walked to the next statue. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't take them all away, he would have already looted them. Raising his head to look at the 3rd statue, Yin Nuoxing blinked his eyes. He felt that there was an inexplicably familiar power in this statue. It was very familiar. There were even light patterns flowing within the statue. This made the sense of familiarity in his heart rise to the peak. Emperor of 10,000 laws, the self-proclaimed weaver of 10,000 laws. He was extremely talented, unpredictable, and crazy. With a single thought, he could create 10,000 formations, break 10,000 Dao, and subdue 10,000 laws. He was a genius in formations since ancient times. When Yin Nuoxing saw this introduction, he finally felt a little excited. Emperor of 10,000 laws was actually an emperor-level formation master. With a single thought, he could create 10,000 formations. How terrifying would it be for a person of that level to set up a formation? Now that I have activated a demon-level formation, if I want to activate 10,000 formations, it will take me a long time at least. It will also be extremely difficult for me to control it with my spiritual power. As for a god-level formation, even if I am a level 4, it will be difficult for me to weave 10% of it. Yin Nuoxing's eyes flickered slightly. Although Yishi had been teaching him formations, he felt that his results were still a little too slow. However, when it came to formations, stability and quality were required, not speed. Unfortunately, there was such a stubborn person who wanted both stability and speed. While he was still deep in thought, a huge formation suddenly appeared in front of him. It was bigger than his entire body. When it appeared quietly in front of him, he was shocked. Just as he wanted to take a step back, the space around him trembled slightly. Layers of formations appeared in the void, and all of them were facing him. Then, a suppressive force swept towards Yin Nuoxing from all directions. Boom! The suppressive force landed directly on his body, causing the unprepared Yin Nuoxing to stomp a hole in the ground. His body was slightly bent. It actually wanted him to bow down. Bah! I won't bow. If you have the ability, why don't you jump out and bite me? Yin Nuoxing also felt the strength of the suppressive force, and couldn't help but spit fiercely. His evil spirit eye opened in response. Layers of formations appeared in front of his eyes, then gathered and condensed into an extremely bright formation that floated in front of his eyes. Break! When the two formations appeared, Yin Nuoxing fiercely glared at the formations that were facing him. His spiritual power rapidly spread out and invaded the hundreds of formations. Those formations all disintegrated one by one. The suppressive force also quietly disappeared, allowing Yin Nuoxing to heave a sigh of relief. Amazing, cool, so powerful. Chapter 518. Slowly closing his eyes, Yin Nuoxing seemed to have seen a soul-stirring scene. The 10,000 Laws Imperial Emperor could create 10,000 formations with a single thought, enveloping the entire world. He seemed to be immersed in a sea of light. The profoundness of those incomparably huge formations was not something he could imagine. The Emperor of all laws weaves 10,000 formations. Yin Nuoxing stared fixedly at the figure standing in the ocean of light. He saw the figure reach out his hand and press down on the void. Formations appeared out of thin air and connected into a cluster of formations. Then, this cluster of formations connected with other formations. Gradually, a formation that was only 1,000 feet in size was perfectly connected by hundreds of formations to form a gigantic formation that was tens of thousands of feet in size. However, this was not the end. The formation that was tens of thousands of feet in size suddenly trembled. It was as if cells were splitting, and another formation that was exactly the same as the original formation was split. Over 1,000 formations formed two similar formation clusters and slowly rotated in midair. The terrifying energy was not as simple as 1 plus 1. The energy was multiplied by many times. Above the two similar formation clusters, a gigantic formation that spanned hundreds of thousands of feet appeared and enveloped the two formation clusters. Then, this gigantic formation and the two formation clusters trembled again and split into another similar formation cluster. The dense light from the formation flooded the entire void. The strengthening power was multiplied by many times, causing Yin Nuoxing to feel a sense of fear. Such a violent method of weaving. Was he even human? Hundreds of formations are connected to form a whole, and this whole will be completely duplicated. Then, another even larger formation will connect these two parts to form a new whole. Then, it will be duplicated again and connected with an even larger formation. If this continues, in just a few times, the formation will cover an extremely vast area, and its power will increase exponentially. Yin Nuoxing casually calculated the data, then took in a breath of cold air and suddenly covered his mouth. His eyes were even more frightened. This Emperor of 10,000 laws, I'm afraid he's crazier than me. I don't know how he came up with such a method. The duplication of the array, especially the duplication of the array group, consumes a lot of mental strength and soul power. Although it's possible to build an extremely terrifying array with a small array, the mental strength consumed. TSK, an astronomical figure. She raised her head and saw that the figure was still repeating the actions of replicating, combining, and replicating. The formation that was originally only 1,000 feet in size gradually expanded to cover an area of nearly 1,000,000 miles. Then it expanded to tens of millions of miles, hundreds of millions of miles. If the energy was focused on a single point and exploded, it would probably blast a huge hole in the origin region. Yin Nuashing was shocked. He found that it was very easy for him to understand the formations here. It was as if he could easily see the structure of the entire formation, how the formations were connected together, and how they were replicated from each other. Yin Nuashing's heart trembled. Her evil spirit was operating at its fastest speed. There were even some scarlet runes floating around her eyes. Even her eyebrows and nose were dyed scarlet. She did not hesitate to circulate the soul-burning technique at 3 times the normal rate to support the power of the evil spirit eye. The hundreds of thousands of formations converged into a sea of information that roared and poured into her mind. However, the information regarding the formations had long been blocked by her. Only 1/10 of the information truly poured into her mind. Outside, Xian was alarmed by a huge energy storm. She hurriedly opened Mei Mao and turned her head. She saw formations floating around Yin Nuashing's body. Her 6 wings were several dozen feet wide, and there was a faint and terrifying sound of wind and thunder whistling. Yin Nuashing was merely observing myriad art Imperial Emperor playing with formations, and there was such a huge commotion. Boss has entered a state of deep comprehension. He is operating those eyes with all his might. He probably saw something very valuable inside, something that is worth comprehending with all his might. Terrifying, very powerful. Nightmare could not help but exclaim. Then, a fanatical smile appeared on his face. That's right, it was like that. The more powerful Yin Nuashing was, the more it could stimulate him and make him even more excited. Let's back off a little. Nightmare grinned. Xian saw the fanaticism in his eyes and could not help but feel a little apprehensive. This guy was also a madman. He became stronger when facing a strong opponent. This was probably one of the reasons why he had chosen to travel together. Indeed, a madman needed another madman to grind him down. They stood far away. Although Xian still wanted to cultivate for a while, she was not in a hurry to continue after Yin Nuashing ended. In her current state, it was difficult to enter a state of deep comprehension. With a flip of her hand, 2 sparkling and translucent scrolls appeared in her hands. These were the scrolls that automatically flew into her hands when she was comprehending in the 2 statues. Xian pondered for a while and also chose to cultivate later. When she was comprehending, she would automatically sense which scroll was suitable and automatically choose it. Then, she would directly cultivate inside. It's out! Nightmare shouted excitedly. Xian hurriedly lifted Mei Mao up and looked at Yin Nuashing. Then, she saw that in front of the statue of Emperor of all laws, the brightest ball of light quietly left the group of light balls and flew toward Yin Nuashing. Xian was relieved. She was worried that the inheritance would give up on Little Star. Now, it seemed that she had worried too much. The brightest one should be the most powerful inheritance of Emperor of all laws, Nightmare muttered. Yin muttered. Then, he looked down and waved it at Xian. Sister, what did you get? This is the low-level immortal grade Heart Demon Soul Art. Wow, I can tell it's not anything good just by hearing its name. Xian could not help but chuckle when he heard Duan Ling Tian's ridicule. He lifted the 2 scrolls in his hand and said softly, "The Heart-Slaying Soul Sword and the Celestial Spirit Technique are both Saint grade advanced. However, their grades are too high. I reckon they'll be difficult to cultivate, and they won't be able to unleash their full potential." After she finished speaking, she lightly shook her head. They were still only at the immortal rank. Although there were great benefits to cultivating high-grade profound techniques at such a young age, that was under the guidance of someone. With their own strength, Being able to cultivate the 3 grades of profound techniques of the devil rank, superior grade, fine grade, and top grade, was already extremely formidable. Jumping to the saint grade in an instant, even divine underworld experts would be envious of this. Wow, it's a whole level higher than mine. So powerful. As for cultivation, it's fine. There's also a freak who cultivates divine grade, divine grade, divine grade. Look at his Xian technique. It's so cool and gorgeous. Its power is so frightening. Later, when we enter the statue, we just have to hurry up and cultivate. Even if there's no one to guide us, we can still figure out on our own. Saint grade isn't that easy to cultivate. Sister, you have to be careful. Nightmare spoke very eloquently and quickly. Hearing this, Xian was stunned. Then, she smiled bitterly. Little Star's cultivation was risking her life. Even if she did not want to, she did not have the ability to do so. In the sea of arrays, Yin Nuoxing's mind suddenly had an extra piece of information. It was so sudden that it caused his soul to tremble. His evil spirit, I was almost shattered. This is the great connection and mirror image replication of arrays. When Yin Nuoxing saw this extra piece of information, he took a light breath. Strictly speaking, this could not be considered a Xian technique or Xian technique. It was just the experience and comprehension of Myriad Art's Emperor Monarch when he was fiddling with arrays. It just so happened that the figure in front of him was operating the array limitlessly. It was countless times clearer than what he had comprehended himself. Myriad Art's Emperor Monarch is indeed a genius in arrays. Only a madman could think of this kind of amplification method. Yin Nuoxing scrutinized the information that was pouring into his mind. The information wasn't messy. It was very complete. It was the comprehension of the Myriad Art Imperial Emperor's cultivation arrays, as well as his comprehension during cultivation. This was definitely a priceless treasure. If it was put outside, many underworld emperors and even divine emperors would come to snatch it. Moreover, because the Myriad Art Imperial Emperor was a giant in the field of arrays, countless array masters would rush over madly. It could be said that if someone knew that Yin Nuoxing had this book, countless people would come to rob him. However, in the current realm of the gods, only a few families dared to provoke Yin Nuoxing. Most of the others did not dare to provoke this madman. Even emperor gods did not want to provoke an existence who could shatter an eternal divine weapon. There's more. Just as Yin Nuoxing was immersed in the comprehension of the cultivation book, Xian and Nightmare saw another extremely bright ball of light flying towards Yin Nuoxing. It circled around him and then landed in front of him. Little bits of information flowed towards Yin Nuoxing's glabella. There's more, there's more, there's more. Xian's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. She extended her jade-like finger and pointed at the statue. There were a few balls of light that were originally rotating at a moderate speed. Suddenly, they spun a little faster. However, they still didn't fly out. They seemed to be hesitant and didn't know if they should float towards Yin Nuo. Nightmare also saw this and hurriedly held his breath. His pitch-black eyes were so wide that they were about to fall out. The 4 and 5 balls of light spun faster and faster. They were so fast that their shadows were almost touching, but they refused to fly out. At this moment, a few formations rapidly condensed in front of Yin Nuoxing, after which they combined together and quickly split into 2. Then they combined again and split again. Not long after, the hall was enveloped by a dense formation. The energy that permeated from it caused Yin and Yin Nuoxing to tremble in fear. At this moment, the hesitant balls of light suddenly turned and flew towards Yin Nuoxing. Moreover, there were more than 5 of them. The brightest balls of light basically all floated out. More than a dozen balls of light spun around Yin Nuoxing, fighting to be the first to merge into the latter's glabella. This scene caused Ziyin and Jian Wushuang to laugh bitterly without end. This fellow is really shocking. The 2 of us only took a single type of inheritance when we accepted the inheritance, yet he took over 10 as soon as he arrived. Moreover, because they were formations, their value was slightly higher than profound techniques. Yin Nuashing also seemed to feel more than a dozen streams of information burrowing into his mind at once. His brows twitched, and he cursed in his heart. What the hell was this? Didn't the inheritances come one by one? Why did they have to come in groups? Such a huge amount of information rushed into his mind. Did they want him to cultivate or kill him? However, cursing was one thing. He quickly calmed his mind and sorted out the piles of information that rushed in. The energy of each piece of information had a unique aura, so he didn't have to worry about sorting out wrongly. It just took a long time. In the outside world, Xian and Nightmare also breathed a sigh of relief after seeing that Yin Nuashing was fine. In the huge loft, Yishi held a book that was even bigger than her and quietly read it. She glanced at the door and outside the window from time to time. She couldn't help but sigh softly, shake her head, and continue reading. Yishi, little star is missing. Upstairs, Feng Air ran down in a panic and threw herself at Yishi. She picked her up and said anxiously, "You've already said it for the 89th time." Yishi shook her head helplessly and closed the book. Her small hand reached out from her long sleeve and rubbed Feng Air's head. She said, "He's only gone for a day. Perhaps he promised Big Brother and the others some opportunity. It's fine, trust me." Feng Air tilted her head and looked at Yishi. She slowly put her down and nodded as if she didn't fully understand. Then she jogged upstairs. Seeing this, Yishi flipped through the big book again and couldn't help but call her a little girl in her heart. 2 hours later, the sound of hurried footsteps came from the stairs again, making her smile bitterly and helplessly. She closed the book and opened her arms. Then she saw Feng Air anxiously pick her up and say anxiously, Yishi, little star is missing." Yishi just wanted to knock her head and faint. Then she could only mutter, "Big Brother Nuo, come back quickly. Xiaoxi's going to be played to death by this girl." Chapter 519. Yin Nuashing's body was surrounded by the terrifying light of the formation, which circulated endlessly according to a specific path. It made Yin Nuashing look dazzling. There seemed to be an extremely terrifying power circulating in his body, which then overlapped and continued to circulate. Yin Nuashing gradually calmed down. Seeing that his cultivation had gradually calmed down, and the 6 wings on his back were retracted like a screen, Li Yin and Zi Yin sighed softly. They looked at each other and nodded. Then they hurriedly sat down in front of the statue and continued to cultivate. As soon as they sat down, they entered a deep state of meditation. If others were to see this, they would probably be so shocked that they would bite their tongues. Just how strong was his comprehension ability to enter a deep state of meditation after sitting down? In the scene that Yin Nuashing saw, the scene of the formation splitting was extremely clear. The figure kept repeating this action endlessly. Rays of light circulated in this space of the formation. The boundless energy here condensed and dissipated again. 1 turned into 2, 2 turned into 4, 4 turned into 8, until there were tens of thousands of formations hanging in the sky. Every time Yin Nuashing felt that the energy of the formations was about to crash down, the boundless energy would silently dissipate. Yin Nuashing lowered his head. In his hands were a dozen or so array formations arranged vertically. From afar, this array formation looked like a Vajra pestle. The array formations at the top and bottom were larger, while the array formation in the middle was 2 times smaller. Of course, Yin Nuashing couldn't use all his strength to inscribe this large formation. If he did, he wouldn't be able to control the subsequent splits, and the energy would be depleted very quickly. Thus, the largest formation he was holding was only a foot in size. The scene that he saw just now kept repeating in his mind. The information was deeply imprinted in his mind. He knew what to do. His hand that was holding the dozen or so formations suddenly trembled. 1 divided into 2, 2 combined, 2 divided into 4, 4 divided into 4, 4 divided into 4, 4 divided into 8. Yin Nuashing closed his eyes and quietly sensed the mysterious power in the formations. He constantly combined the formations, replicated them, and combined them. The formation in his hands quietly grew larger until it left his body and floated in front of him. His spiritual power and soul power perfectly controlled the two processes. Then, it continued to split and combine. He didn't know how many times he repeated this action. The formation that was only a foot in size was finally covered by a formation that was 10,000 feet in size after countless rearrangements. If one looked carefully, they would discover that there were countless small formations under this formation. It was just that they were drowned by the sea of light, so it was difficult to notice them. The power of that small formation has been magnified by tens of thousands of times. Finally, when Yun Nuoxing's spiritual power was about to reach its limit, he finally stopped. He looked at the formation that was 10,000 feet in size and couldn't help but gulp. This small formation was probably disdained to be used by a mundane-level formation master to practice. However, if its power was unleashed now, it would probably be terrifying. Let's modify it a little. Although each large formation that connects the two will look like an enlarged version of the original formation, it will still affect the formation or formation groups that are connected to each other. Yun Nuoxing thought for a while. Although this was already done very well, he didn't want it to end like this. He felt that he could still make some changes. I can modify the formation groups and change them into a dozen or so different formations. As for the large formations that are used to connect after splitting, I'll use the one with the highest grade to combine them. Since it can be divided into two, it can also be divided into four, right? Then, the 4 can be divided into 16. The size of a formation could be expanded according to the thoughts of the formation master. If it could be expanded to 10,000 feet in size, it could also be expanded to 10 feet in size. Apart from some formations that had a basic size of more than 10,000 feet, the destructive formations couldn't be shrunk. However, the Myriad Art Emperor's method was different. If he expanded a 5th grade immortal level formation from 10 feet in size to 10,000 feet in size, its power might more or less change, but it wouldn't be much different. At most, it would have the power of a 6th grade or 7th grade immortal level formation. However, if he used the Myriad Art Emperor's combination splitting method, the power could be multiplied infinitely, allowing a 5th grade immortal level formation to unleash power that was close to a divine grade formation. In the true sense, 1 plus 1 was greater than 2. Just as Yun Nuoxing was tirelessly trying to split 1 into 4, 4, and 16, and modifying the formations as he wished, and trying out various combinations of formations, his mind suddenly trembled, causing his hand to tremble. Those formations all shattered in front of him. How is this? The intense pain caused Yun Nuoxing's handsome face to contort. The soul light ball between his eyebrows pulsed at a high frequency, and the 6-colored roulette also vibrated. Waves of chaotic soul aura rushed out from between his eyebrows, and the temples beside his forehead twitched. It's going to explode. There's something. Yun Nuoxing gritted his teeth, and his entire body lay on the ground. He held his head tightly with both hands, and his eyes were bloodshot. It seemed like something was about to rush out from his soul. It wasn't that something was pouring in, but something was coming out from his soul. In the formation world, and in front of the statue, Yun Nuoxing roared in pain at the same time. The roar was so loud that it spread throughout the entire hall, causing everyone to be shocked. They hurriedly exited their cultivation states and rushed in the direction of Yun Nuoxing and the others. Xian and Nightmare were scared out of their wits by this roar. They hurriedly raised their heads and saw Yun Nuoxing holding his head with both hands. His handsome face was filled with pain, and he spat out a mouthful of blood before falling straight to the ground. Little Star, Xian was so scared that her face turned pale. She couldn't care less about her cultivation. Her delicate body flashed, and she directly rushed behind Yun Nuoxing. She stretched out her arms, hugged him, and knelt down. Her jade-like hands trembled as she gently touched his forehead. Seeing Xian's unreasonable speed, Nightmare's face couldn't help but twitch, and he hurriedly rushed over. What's wrong? What's wrong? Where's Little Star? It was also at this moment that Yao Hua and the others rushed in through the door. The roar just now had directly interrupted everyone's cultivation. Their faces were slightly pale, but more than that, they were frightened. Especially after seeing Yin Nuashing fall, they were a little uneasy. Before Xian could say anything, a blurry black figure appeared in front of her, causing Mei Mao to pause. When she saw who it was, she hurriedly called out, "Senior Mountain." The person who came was the Mountain King. He was just leisurely drinking tea when Yin Nuashing's roar made him spit out his tea. He couldn't be bothered to clean up and hurriedly ran over. The Mountain King waved his hand, squatted down, and placed his palm on Yin Nuashing's forehead. Chi! However, just as the Mountain King's palm touched Yin Nuashing's forehead, a strange force rebounded and hit his palm directly, causing him to be stunned. Everyone was a little confused, not knowing what had happened. That flash of black energy just now seemed to be Little Star's stellar energy, right? The Mountain King's expression was strange, and he touched Yin Nuashing's forehead again. However, before he could get even an inch closer, that mysterious force appeared again, and this time he was sent flying. The Mountain King, who was sent flying, retreated dozens of meters before coming to a stop. His widened eyes seemed to tell everyone that he had seen a ghost. Oh my God, it's a good thing that those old fellows aren't here. If they saw this old man being sent flying by an unconscious person, this embarrassing incident will be passed down through the ages. The Mountain King walked back to Yin Nuashing's side, and his low whisper made everyone sweat. "Senior King, what happened to young Master Yin?" Qin Yin asked. An overload of soul energy has formed a violent energy domain there. If you touch it casually, it will stimulate the violent soul energy and make it even more violent. The Mountain King shook his head and said with a strange expression, "But I've lived for a long time, and this old man has never seen such a strange thing. A soul that is comparable to the peak of the demonic rank can even send me flying after going berserk." Boom! Before the Mountain King could finish his sentence, a burst of stellar energy exploded, and a golden figure flew into the depths of the Grand Hall. Everyone turned their gazes in a daze, and a moment later, they heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the depths of the Grand Hall. "Fly!" The Mountain King's cheeks trembled, and he finished the last word. "Don't touch this child's soul first. It doesn't look like there's a problem with her cultivation. It looks like something from the inside has rushed out and formed a repulsive effect with her soul. That's the so-called lost memory coming back." As a Mountain King spoke, everyone's expression changed slightly. Yin Nuashing had lost her memory. Everyone knew this except for Shuegu, Qin Yin, and Nightmare. However, why would she suddenly remember something when she was cultivating? "All right, continue with your cultivation. I'll look after this child." The Mountain King waved his hand and brought Yao Hua out from the depths of the Grand Hall, then urged everyone. Hearing this, Yao Hua and the rest hurriedly shook their heads while the others stood stubbornly. None of them left, causing the great mountain's sovereign king to be stunned. He stared deeply at Yin Nuashing. This little guy was the soul of this group. Naturally, he could tell that the worry and unease in the eyes of Yin Nuashing and the others came from the bottom of their hearts. Of course, the Mountain King didn't want them to waste time. He said that if she didn't wake up in a day, Yao Hua and the others didn't need to keep watch anymore. They could continue with their cultivation. It was useless to worry and worry. Everyone nodded. They knew that it was useless to just keep watch, so they agreed. Around 4 hours later, the violent energy between Yin Nuashing's brows quietly dissipated. When a Mountain King tried to probe again, he discovered that the soul had blocked his spiritual power from probing. This made him doubt his life. He had experienced being sent flying by a demonic soul and being blocked by a demonic soul in a day. He couldn't help but blush. 6 hours later, the sleeping Yin Nuashing's eyelids trembled gently. Everyone saw that the 2 eyeballs seemed to be moving. They couldn't help but feel happy and quickly went over. Then they saw the eyelids tremble and slowly open. The pair of silver-purple eyes below still had some confusion and lingering pain. A moment later, the emptiness slowly faded away. Yin Nuoxing's eyes surged with life. Her vision slowly converged from its blurry state. Soon after, she saw joyful faces. There was even a beautiful face that was almost crying tears of joy. Her pale face flushed with color. "Girl, what did I do in the ghost aura forest a few years ago? Tell me the truth." When Yin Nuoxing woke up, the first thing she did wasn't ask about the time or what happened. Instead, she asked about the ghost aura forest a few years ago. Everyone was stunned. Xian and Mei Mao didn't dare to look at her. Everyone knew what happened that day. Anyone who survived the ghost aura forest knew. However, under Yin Nuoxing's calm gaze, she didn't dare to say it. No, she didn't want to say it. He placed his hand on Xian's arm and slowly slid it down to hold Xian's small hand. The warm feeling caused Xian's delicate body to tremble. When she saw Yin Nuoxing close his eyes, she clenched her teeth and slowly opened her mouth to recount the events that happened that day from beginning to end. Shuige and the others didn't go to the ghost aura forest that day and only heard rumors. Now that they heard a legendary witness recounting it in front of them, they were even more shocked. Even the Mountain King's eyes were sharp. He was a little surprised and even shocked. Of course, he knew the significance of the eternal weapon, but this child actually had the ability to shatter it. "The art of stars, is this it?" Yin Nuoxing murmured, and a soul image flew out from between his eyebrows. Then it was displayed in front of everyone. There was a person in the image, and he was holding an immeasurably huge formation. Then, a huge pillar of starlight descended from the sky. Even though it was just an image, it still caused everyone to tremble in fear. It was as if the pillar of light was really descending on their heads. Chapter 520. The towering pillar of light was very dazzling, even though it was standing in the star field. It was like a huge beacon that pierced through the 9 heavens and the Milky Way. No one knew where it came from. It went straight through the array and plunged downwards. No one knew where it led to. "Is this it?" Yin Nuoxing asked again. His head was still a little dizzy, and he felt like slapping himself unconscious. Everyone nodded their heads in a daze as they stared blankly at the huge pillar of light. Seeing their expressions, Yin Nuoxing could not help but roll his eyes. Although he himself was very shocked when he saw it, it was not to the extent that his soul had left his body like this. With a wave of his hand, the image disappeared in front of him. Xian and the others also recovered from the shock. When they saw Yin Nuoxing stand up, they quickly reached out to help him. "I'm fine. It's just that when I was studying the array, the star technique suddenly awakened in my mind. Go and cultivate." Seeing everyone supporting him in a flurry, Yin Nuoxing shook his head with a bitter smile. He held his dizzy head and smiled. "Are you really okay?" Everyone was doubtful. They had never heard him scream when he was injured. That mournful roar just now went straight into the sky. Was he really okay? Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and walked towards the statue of Emperor Wanfa step by step. Xian was also very careful to support him, for fear that he would fall. "Just a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more." Hearing that murmur, everyone was a little shocked. Then they smiled bitterly. This guy, they didn't expect him to be so crazy when he cultivated. After taking a deep breath, Yin Nuoxing smiled at Xian. Then he slowly sat down cross-legged and his consciousness touched the statue again. Seeing that he had calmed down and seemed to be really fine, everyone went back to their seats. When Yuan Shi and the others were about to walk out of the hall, they still looked back worriedly. After watching for 10 minutes and making sure that nothing was wrong, they went back. The Mountain Lord looked at Yin Nuoxing the entire time. He stroked his little beard and looked at the 5 statues. Then he sighed and sat down cross-legged. He was very interested in this kid. Yin Nuoxing and the other 2 naturally didn't know that the Mountain Lord was watching them from behind. After Yin Nuoxing entered the state, he used his fastest speed to comprehend the information that was transmitted to him. The light balls that floated back now flew to Yin Nuoxing again. They were like a group of elves happily holding a party. Yin Nuoxing, looking at the dozens of balls of light, the Mountain King's hand trembled as he tore off a strand of his mustache. It was so painful that he sucked in a breath of cold air. He looked at Yin Nuashing in bewilderment before spitting out 2 words. Monster. Time passed quickly. 2 months seemed to have passed in the blink of an eye. However, these 2 months were extremely busy for Yin Nuashing and the others. Those who cultivated mystic skills were cultivating mystic skills, and those who comprehended them were still comprehending them. Now, the 5 statues in the hall had quietened down. Rows of light balls flowed under the statues' feet. Yun Nuashing used half a month to comprehend the 10,000 arts Imperial Emperor to perfection. Then, he used the dozens of arrays in front of the Mountain Lord. The old man was almost scared to death. The Mountain Lord didn't believe that Yun Nuashing could comprehend all the arrays in half a day. Even if a 9th grade Divine Arts Array Master were here, he wouldn't be able to comprehend all the arrays in half a day, let alone Yun Nuashing, who was just an immortal realm brat. Even a 9th grade Divine Arts Array Master wouldn't be able to comprehend all the arrays in half a day. Arrays at this level were already extraordinary. There was a certain level of mystery in them. If one could comprehend them from the scroll until one couldn't sense anything special, then it would be considered perfect. Therefore, Yin Nuashing's perfect state meant that he could use all the arrays in their entirety. It was much more perfect than the evolved version of the 10,000 spirits killing array, the heaven refining array. After all, the latter was a heaven-sealing array with many talismans in it. He found that in that world, his comprehension of arrays would be enhanced. Therefore, he specially used 5 days to comprehend the 10,000 spirits killing array. He made great progress. Originally, he could only use 30% of the array, but now, he could use 60% of it. However, Yin Nuashing couldn't comprehend the rest no matter how hard he tried. He could only blame it on his insufficient realm. The Star Arts incantation was very arrogant. When he first came in, he didn't even want to integrate it into the soul-burning incantation. It even conflicted with the other profound arts. In the end, it was dismembered by the other profound arts. Then, it obediently joined the other profound arts. Yin Nuashing found that this was a versatile incantation. Not only could it attract the power of the stars for cultivation, but it could also cultivate the soul and spirit. The power of the stars poured into the soul and spirit, making the 6 paths of reincarnation disk between his eyebrows look like it was rotating in a starry sky. Where did this magical incantation come from? Yin Nuashing was very curious. This incantation was not only domineering, but it also had such a powerful array. The falling stars was definitely a super destructive technique. Its power was no weaker than the netherworld execution of the heavens. Moreover, it was a regional bombardment. The netherworld execution of the heavens could strike anywhere. The little girl said that Jin Wang said the name of the Star Arts. I think they should know about it. It can't be from the 12-star palaces. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. Why did he feel that this had something to do with the 12-star palaces? Was the eternal divine weapon broken? I wonder if the netherworld execution of the heavens can do it? After muttering to himself for a while, Yin Nuashing finally ended his half a month of cultivation. Then, he went to cultivate at the Soul Blade Great Emperor's place. He took 3 to 4 scrolls and came out after half a month. He also spent half a month cultivating at the Colored Glaze Great Emperor's place. Colored Glaze Great Emperor. What's the relationship with Heavenly God Colored Glaze? Yin Nuashing was puzzled. Back then, he obtained something from the Heavenly God Colored Glaze's underground palace, the Glaze Treasure Mirror. It could allow Xian skills, secret arts, and even arrays to accumulate power, break through the limit, and unleash extremely powerful attacks. He had always wanted this, but he couldn't melt the glazed divine crystal to cast it. He still couldn't cultivate it, so he could only be anxious. Fortunately, Z said that the melting speed could be increased with the help of the 2 divine flames, but when would it be completed? It depends on fate. If you and the Glaze Treasure Mirror are really fated, then you'll definitely be able to cast the glaze in your lifetime. Z chuckled. Yin Nuashing's face twitched. How long would he have to live? Wouldn't it take tens of thousands of years? However, Zi told him that the glazed divine crystal was already melting. It was melting very slowly, so slow that it was enough to make him break down. No hurry. It will melt in 10,000 years, Zi said calmly. Yin Nuoxing was petrified. 10,000 years would pass in the blink of an eye for old monsters like them. One seclusion and one cultivation would only take 10,000 years. However, to young people like them, 10,000 years was like a time that was difficult to surpass. It was just a number, brat. Who are you calling an old monster? Do you believe that I won't push you down? Zi suddenly went berserk. She strode with her long legs and knocked Yin Nuoxing to the ground. I was wrong. I was just thinking about it. I didn't mean that. No, molest. Don't pull my pants. Yin Nuoxing's handsome face was pale. He looked at Ziyi, who was sitting on him, as though he was looking at a hungry tigress. You can't even think about it. Swish! A cold laugh, accompanied by the sound of clothes being torn apart, resounded in this world of flames. Lan Exan, and the netherworld ruins, Sword glanced over curiously. Lan Exan immediately turned her head away with a red face, while the latter rushed into the sea of flames and pretended that she didn't see anything. Help! Exan, netherworld ruins. Something is going to happen. My moral integrity, asterisk, and asterisk. Yin Nuoxing screamed in despair, but halfway through, he was stopped by a delicate little hand. The Mountain Emperor in the outside world watched as Yin Nuoxing's body trembled constantly, while his face turned white and red. His weathered eyes flashed with astonishment and confusion. He thought that there was a problem with his cultivation. However, his breathing was very stable. It was just his body that wasn't right. What a strange child. The Mountain Emperor shook his head. Half a month later, Yin Nuoxing ended his cultivation with the colored glazed Great Emperor and took 5 scrolls. Then, he staggered towards the remaining 2 statues that had been activated. He seemed to be in a daze. After being humiliated for half an hour, Yin Nuoxing felt that he had completely lost his dignity as a young man. Although he wasn't, he felt that he had nothing left to live for. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't defeat Ziyi, he would have taken his spear and gone to battle. I swear that I won't enter the spirit world for half a year. Thinking of his tragic experience, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but shed tears of humiliation. He just wanted to find his little cotton-padded jackets to warm his heart. Unfortunately, Xian was at a crucial moment in his cultivation. The 2 little girls didn't follow him. Exiner was still hiding in the spirit world and didn't dare to see him. Why is the heavens so mean to me? Yin Nuoxing cried out in grief. Then he walked towards the 4th statue in a daze. The Mountain Emperor saw that he was like a dog that had its spine pulled out. The doubt in his eyes deepened. The 4th statue was that of the Great Emperor of Destruction. The supreme technique he had mastered emphasized the power of destruction, and extermination. If this power entered one's body, one's vitality would be instantly destroyed. There is also a type of destruction array inside that could unleash the power of destruction to the extreme. When Yin Nuoxing arrived at the 5th statue, Yao Hua and the others were already cultivating in the main hall. He glanced at them. For the first time, he felt so far away from them. It was as if he was still standing in the underworld and couldn't feel any warmth. Sister Su Ming, Brother Nuoxing is so pitiful. Should I go out and comfort him? Xin, hugged the Su Ming sword and hid from Ziyi. She was a little worried. Yes, and you have to comfort him for a long time. This is very suitable for you. Wait until he finishes cultivating. He's in a daze right now. It's very strange. His comprehension and cultivation speed have increased dozens of times. Let's not disturb him for now, Su Ming said. Oh, Xin, blinked at Mei Mao and nodded. The 5th statue was a demon emperor. Yin Nuoxing had some impression of its original form. It was a very mysterious race, the ancient fate-devouring beast. This kind of demon emperor could devour fate, or some kind of fate. This kind of illusory thing didn't seem to exist. It couldn't be touched or seen, but some people knew of its existence. The ancient fate-devouring beast was one of them. Of course, the ancient fate-devouring beast could devour fate and also give it to others. It had the heaven-defying ability to change one's fate. Yun Nuoxing cultivated under this demon emperor statue and cultivated under the great emperor destruction for half a month. She took 5 scrolls each time. Then, she looked at Xian, who was still cultivating under the great empress. She sighed sadly. Looking at everyone in the main hall, Yun Nuoxing walked out and continued walking into the depths of the corridor. Chapter 5:21. Yun Nuoxing was also curious about the other doors in the second corridor, so he went in to take a look. There were also cultivation techniques inside, but they were related to blacksmiths, alchemists, and seers. Yun Nuoxing was interested in seers, but he was already exhausted from just cultivating formations and cultivating himself. He had no choice but to become a blacksmith. After all, he still had to repair the Nether Void Sword and the others. He had no choice but to become a blacksmith. There was a blacksmith's cultivation method here, as well as a secret room and a large pile of materials that were casually piled up in a corner. Seeing the pile of 5th or 6th rank materials, Yun Nuoxing naturally understood that this pile of broken things was used by the Mountain King for people to practice, so he conveniently borrowed it. After spending half a month and tons of materials, Ling Hongjian finally reached the 3rd rank and forged a flame core. It glowed with the earth core, and some of the formations had already begun to repair themselves. Seeing this, Yun Nuoxing's miserable mood was slightly lifted. However, it did not last long before he was defeated by his own mentality. He was once again filled with grief and indignation. He could only turn this grief into motivation for his cultivation. Excellent. Don't try to persuade him. Let it be crazy for a while. He has reached the half-demon rank in the past 2 months. Let's see if he can reach the demon rank in one go, Su Ming said. Sister Su Ming, it's too early for him to reach the demon rank. We have to suppress Brother Nuoxing. We can't let him reach the 9th cycle of the half-demon rank. Once he reaches the demon rank, Lan Xian hurriedly shook her head. The Nether Void Sword was startled, then smiled bitterly. She had almost forgotten. She was too excited. Repairing the Netherworld Ruin Sword was several times more difficult than Yun Nuoxing had imagined. They had almost used up all the materials here, and only then did they succeed in upgrading it half a month later. This was even done with the tacit cooperation of the two. As for the 1000 Tempering Hammer technique, Yun Nuoxing had left by himself. He did not mind and carefully put it away. Perhaps he would need it in the future. Yun Nuoxing did not enter the alchemist's room to take a look. Instead, he walked into the seer's room. The moment he stepped in, Yun Nuoxing felt as though his entire body was being scrutinized. It was as though he was invisible. After walking around inside, Yun Nuoxing looked around and didn't find anything to his liking. There was also no so-called predestined thing. Even if he wanted to cultivate it, he couldn't cultivate it. Only when this profound Method Heart Sutra automatically came to him would he allow him to cultivate it. As expected, it's not the fate of a seer. Yun Nuoxing sighed and shook her head. Just as she was about to leave, an ancient book rushed out from the corner. Its yellowed cover seemed like it would shatter with a pinch, and it gave off a very vicissitude feeling. Yun Nuoxing curiously took in her hands. Looking at the name on the cover, she instantly understood why she was chosen. Heavenly Evolution. Yun Nuoxing used extremely strange syllables to read these 3 words. These were actually words from the mythological era. Suppressing the throbbing and curiosity in her heart, Yun Nuoxing nervously flipped to the first page. In an instant, her excited mood fell to the bottom. She even felt a little dejected. There was no doubt about it. The first page was the general outline, and only 1 sentence was written. The Great Fate Deduction Technique is composed of 7 types of divine powers. They are the Heavenly Evolution Technique, Destiny Technique, Divinity Deduction, Great Prophecy Technique, Great Fate Technique, Heavenly Constellation Technique, and Heavenly Fate Reincarnation Technique. Without any one of these, it would be difficult to truly deduce fate. When Yun Nuoxing saw this sentence, she felt a little pain in her heart. When she flipped to the back, she felt a sense of suffocation. This was because this yellowed, ancient book was 200 pages thick, and all of them were words from the mythological era. This was nothing. She could understand it, but she was completely confused by some of the strange symbols. She couldn't understand them, nor could she feel them. This was all about comprehension, and in the heavenly evolution technique, there were many things related to the heavenly Tao, heavenly fate, providence, and fate. Yin Nuoxing felt even more confused. "You're courting death." Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. His handsome face collapsed. However, if it was really as described in the book, and she could finally master the true deduction of fate, she could still consider learning it. The deduction of fate mentioned in the book could completely predict the future and not peek at the trend. 1/7 of a book is already so profound. What if all 7 books are gathered together? Will it be able to stun people? Yin Nuoxing completely lost her temper. No matter how curious she could only put it at the bottom of the box. She would decide whether to learn it or not when she was interested in the future. After putting away the heavenly evolution technique, Yin Nuoxing walked out of the door. Looking at the huge wooden door that was tightly shut at the end of the corridor, she nodded and lifted her foot to walk over. After pushing open the door, there was only darkness behind the door. It was an endless darkness without any light. Yin Nuoxing was a little hesitant. He didn't know if he should walk in. After encountering terrifying darkness several times, he was already extremely afraid of it. "Let's go. Don't tell me it's going to eat me?" Yin Nuoxing sighed and took a step inside. As soon as she walked in, the door behind her slammed shut with a loud bang. It made Yin Nuoxing's heart skip a beat. She was purely frightened, especially when it was so dark here. Creak, creak. A strange sound that made one's teeth chatter came from the darkness. Yin Nuoxing had goosebumps all over his body. He only felt a little flustered, especially when he felt that something was spying on him in the darkness. He subconsciously took out the Netherworld Ruin Sword, then carefully released his soul power to slightly illuminate the place. Although the weak light was only a little bit, it was able to continuously spread and eventually illuminate the entire world. However, when Yin Nuoxing illuminated the entire world, his handsome face was completely pale. It was a deathly pale white as gold paper. It was so white that it was almost transparent. The Netherworld Ruin Sword in his hand was unsteady due to fear and almost slipped to the ground. He saw countless red eyes that were densely packed together, reflecting his figure. He saw a group of 8-legged animals that were from 5 to 10 feet in size. They were covered in fur. The creaking sound came from them because they were moving their huge, long legs towards him. At this moment, Yin Nuoxing's heart fell from sadness to fear, from fear to fear, and from despair to darkness. The darkness spread towards anger, and in the end, it became rage. His silver-purple eyes instantly turned blood red, and divine artifacts covered the sky and earth as they shot out. That child should have already walked to the second door. The things inside should be very interesting. I wonder what he saw. At this moment, the mountain monarch had set up a small tea table in front of the statues and was drinking by himself. From time to time, he would poke his head out of the door to see if Yin Nuoxing had walked in. After watching for a while, the mountain monarch turned back to look at Xian and the others. He couldn't help but smile. These children's aptitudes should be the best of the best, the geniuses among geniuses. However, compared to that child, they are still lacking. There aren't many people like that child in the entire pantheon of gods. The Mountain King sighed and poured himself a cup of tea. He lifted the cup to his nose and took a whiff. Then, a satisfied look appeared on his face. Just as he was about to drink the tea, the entire hall rumbled and shook. The tea splashed onto him, and he was caught off guard. Boom! Clang! A series of terrifying explosions came from the depths of the hall. What followed was the sound of something extremely heavy collapsing. Moreover, the tremors from the explosions were so intense that it affected the entire hall. Seal! The mountain sovereign king furrowed his brows. With a wave of his hand, a surge of energy sealed up the entire hall. Instantly, The tremors disappeared without a trace. However, what puzzled him was that Yun Nuoxing seemed to be the only one who had stepped into the depths of the hall. Could it be that something had happened behind the second door? With this thought in mind, the mountain lord stretched his head out. In an instant, he saw a gigantic red door streaking past him at an extremely high speed. It almost touched his nose. Clang. Boom. The giant door flew past and crashed into the first giant door, causing it to collapse. The mountain monarch's face turned pale. A few drops of cold sweat dripped down from his forehead. He was so frightened. However, he continued to calmly look towards the depths of the corridor. Soon after, he saw Yun Nuoxing brandishing dozens of weapons as he fought with the air. Vast and mighty energy splashed and exploded, causing the palace to tremble. Moreover, there were several terrifying energies that caused even the great mountain's sovereign king to shudder in fear as they quietly emerged. Oh no! The mountain monarch turned pale with fright. The explosion of this energy was enough to flatten the entire hall. Child, wake up! The mountain monarch rushed over and appeared beside Yun Nuoxing in an instant. He slapped his palm on the latter's shoulder, causing Yun Nuoxing's body to tremble violently. The shout was like a heavenly voice that penetrated his mind, causing his violent eyes to slowly calm down. After looking around in confusion, Yun Nuoxing seemed to have woken up. He was slightly stunned when he saw the mountain monarch, especially when he saw the mountain monarch's awkward expression. He seemed to have thought of something. He quickly put away his divine weapons and clasped his hands together. Senior Mountain, I'm sorry. The mountain monarch waved his hand and wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead. He smiled and shook his head. The space behind the second door is an illusion. It will project the things you fear the most and suppress your mind. Those who have come here before can break through their limits and directly advance their cultivation to the 5th or 6th cycle. It's very effective. Yun Nuoxing laughed awkwardly. What the mountain monarch was implying was, why did you go berserk when it came to this child? Child, what did you see? Even a mountain monarch couldn't help but want to ask, what did this child who stood at the peak see that made him go berserk? A swarm of giant spiders. Yun Nuoxing laughed dryly and answered truthfully. The mountain monarch was speechless. This answer was unexpected, extremely unexpected. It was hard to imagine, hard to believe. It was unprecedented and probably would never be replicated in the future. Yun Nuoxing was a powerful half-demon, the king of physiques with the spiritual, godly physique, a super powerful existence that could kill the emperor of the underworld. Yet, he was actually afraid of spiders? This life was so dramatic. This time, the mountain monarch didn't know what to say. He felt that anything he said would be wrong. Chapter 522. After the illusion was broken, the place returned to its original state. It was just a simple and spacious corridor. There were no spiders or anything terrifying. The mountain sovereign's mouth twitched slightly. He wanted to say something, but when he saw Yun Nuoxing's innocent and fearful eyes, he swallowed his words. In the end, he could only sigh and wave his hand helplessly. Continue forward. This illusion couldn't stop you in the first place. Now that it has been destroyed, they don't need to test you anymore. The mountain's sovereign laughed bitterly, then pointed inside and said with a smile, Go on. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing scratched his head in embarrassment and nodded. He then walked deeper into the corridor. Actually, he couldn't be blamed for this. Who asked him to see the thing he was most afraid of in the illusion? Under the influence of fear, he was a little violent. It wasn't a big deal. If the mountain sovereign knew what he was thinking, he would probably be petrified. Seeing that Yun Nuoxing had almost reached the door, the mountain sovereign sighed. With a wave of his sleeve, the huge door that flew out flew back. The bumpy area was restored to its original state. Then it merged with the other door and opened gently. After doing all this, the mountain sovereign slowly walked towards Yun Nuoxing. Behind the door was a very precious place. He wanted to see if the child would react in surprise. The third door was a huge celestial door. The colors of the star domain stained the huge door and flowed gently. It was as if a starry sky was rotating on the door. Yin Nuoxing's palm lightly pressed on the door. He felt a cold touch and a faintly discernible suction force, lightly sucking on his skin. He turned back to look at the mountain sovereign standing at the side. When he saw that the mountain sovereign was only looking at him with a smile without saying a word, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. He exerted a little force with his palm, but the door didn't move at all. Yin Nuoxing gradually increased his strength until he used all his strength to barely open the heavy, celestial door. Starry sky? Yin Nuoxing was stunned. Through the gap, he could see a dark area shimmering with starlight. A very pure, celestial power flowed into his body. He was very familiar with this energy, but how could there be such rich celestial power in broad daylight? This is my training ground. It's a celestial space created by a special power. It's just a small trick that every high-level god knows. Training here can increase one's speed and comprehension by a lot. The mountain sovereign smiled. Yin Nuoxing suddenly understood, but when he heard him mention the special power, his heart couldn't help but tremble slightly. He seemed to have heard of the Six Realms Crystal and Zi Shaoxi before, so he couldn't help but ask, the power of rules? You know, the mountain sovereign was really surprised. The rule power was a power that only Emperor God experts could barely come into contact with. He could only come into contact with it and borrow it. But it's fine as long as you know. Don't think too much about it. It's still too early. Yin Nuoxing nodded. It wasn't beneficial for him to explain the power that only people at that level could come into contact with. He just needed to know that there was such a thing. Turning back to look at the door that was only slightly opened, Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath. His 6 wings suddenly spread out from his back. The celestial power in his body boiled with a thought, and an extremely violent power spread throughout his body. Huh! Yin Nuoxing opened his mouth and roared. He held the celestial door with both hands. His veins popped out. The terrifying power caused the celestial door to tremble continuously. The entire door was slowly pushed open. Seeing that there was hope, Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but rejoice in his heart. He used even more strength in his hands, and even the 2 divine flames in his body evaporated every inch of strength in his body. Yin Nuoxing fiercely clenched his teeth, and even a vein on his forehead protruded like an earth dragon. Hidden under his skin, there was actually a faint golden light flowing through the veins. Rumble, seeing that the entire door was pushed open halfway by Yin Nuoxing's strength. The mountain sovereign was completely stunned. He opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. His heart was numb. This celestial door contains a portion of high-level energy. It needs to be activated with one's own energy to push it open. This old man is really speechless. The mountain sovereign laughed bitterly. Ever since Yin Nuoxing came in, all kinds of things had refreshed his understanding of this young man. He had seen more and more things in his long life. However, Yin Nuoxing didn't know what the mountain sovereign was thinking at this moment. If he knew, he would probably immediately release his strength and be sent flying by the door. Clang! Following a loud sound, the celestial door was pushed open violently. It slammed into both sides, causing the palace to tremble. Yin Nuoxing heaved a long sigh of relief and wiped the sweat off his forehead. This broken door was really heavy and heavy. The mountain sovereign walked to his side and tilted his head to look at him. He couldn't help but say, Actually, this door can be opened by injecting energy. Huh? Yin Nuoxing widened his eyes, as though he had heard something unbelievable. This door contains high-level energy. It can be pushed open with energy. Furthermore, the purer the energy, the more energy, the higher the door can be opened. For someone to use pure strength to push it open like you is really rare. I thought you knew about it. The mountain sovereign sighed and shook his head. Yin Nuoxing blinked his eyes and resisted the urge to slap him. He said bitterly, What do you mean by opening a higher door? It literally means that this celestial door has 9 steps. Heaven has 9 layers, And the Milky Way is also known as the 9 heavenly stars. If you can push open the door with a total of 9 steps, you will be able to cultivate at the top of the Milky Way. The effects there are the best, the mountain's sovereign said with a smile. With that said, he waved his hand and turned to walk towards the back. He said, "You can explore on your own. I'll stay behind to help your friends. They will eventually come." "Thank you, Senior." Yin Nuashing cupped his hands and turned around. He stepped into the celestial door. As he walked through the celestial door that was hundreds of meters tall closed behind him with a boom and disappeared. Yin Nuashing could only see the celestial door when he turned around. He couldn't tell that there was a door here at all. The place where he walked in was a huge stone star. This star didn't have any signs of life. It didn't have any distinguishing features. It was just a platform for the mountain's sovereign to enter. This was a celestial door, but there was air and gravity. Yin Nuashing didn't feel any discomfort in his body, but he could feel that the celestial door in his body was very, very active here. It was a very intimate feeling, as though the celestial door was his home. This was his birthplace. This was his home. There seems to be a very strange energy in the celestial door. The elemental door is different as well. The elemental door that is mixed with the celestial door seems to be stronger than the original elemental door. Yin Nuashing looked at the endless stars above. Some of them were very close to him, while others only flickered with light. They seemed to be quite a distance away. Looking at the stone star below his feet, Yin Nuashing stomped his feet twice. Then he squatted down and pushed off, jumping towards the celestial door. As soon as his feet left the ground, he habitually used the wind elemental door. He didn't think that a gust of wind would really sweep over and lift him up. The higher the celestial door, the denser the celestial door. Flying in the celestial door, Yin Nuashing felt very comfortable. His handsome face was brimming with joy. Looking at the huge, twinkling stars, he felt a little overwhelmed and didn't know where to focus his attention. Those huge fireballs and huge water balls flickered in front of his eyes. At the same time, he was overjoyed. At the same time, his heart was incomparably tranquil and filled with a sense of satisfaction. So much so that he had forgotten the humiliation from a few days ago. His long-cherished wish was to be able to travel in the celestial door. Now, he had achieved a little of it. Although it wasn't the real celestial door of the outside world, it wasn't too different from it. So beautiful. His silver-purple eyes reflected the twinkling stars. Yin Nuashing was unconsciously intoxicated. He kept flying higher until his body passed through an invisible barrier. It only stopped him for a moment, slowing him down for a moment. Then, it returned to its original state. However, he didn't think too much about it. He only hated the fact that he didn't have more eyes to look at this beautiful celestial door. What kind of power can actually achieve this? Although it made him forget to return, he still knew that this was only an illusion. But he still couldn't help but want to indulge in it, hypnotizing himself that it was real. The power of laws. Using one's own power of laws to create an illusion of an area. Using one's own power, one can create an illusion of an area. As long as it comes in contact with the power of laws, it can be recreated through the power of laws. It can even pass off the false as the real thing. A faint and clear voice echoed in Yin Nuashing's mind, but it made his heart twitch fiercely. It almost stopped beating. A faint trace of fear emerged in his heart. Yin Nuashing's handsome face paled slightly. He didn't dare to utter a word. He lowered his head and rushed towards the higher levels of the celestial domain, pretending that he didn't hear anything. He even released the light element, wanting to find a place to calm down and cultivate. In the cultivation celestial domain, there are many unusual stars. The most common ones are the blazing stars that flicker with brilliant flames. If you sit in a place where you can endure it and cultivate, it can cause the fire element in your body to mutate. There are also stars of other elements that fill the sky. Some special stars even contain special powers. If you can advance on those special stars, it can strengthen your willpower. You can also use those stars to transform your own energy and elements. Although Yin Nuashing didn't want to listen, Ziyi kept explaining in a soft voice. While the former was frightened, he was also somewhat moved. Ziyi had always been very concerned about him, but when he recalled what happened half a month ago, Yin Nuoxing shuddered fiercely. The idea that had just sprung up his mind was instantly erased in the cradle. Not long after, Yin Nuoxing crossed 8 obstacles and arrived at the 9th layer of the celestial domain. The stars here were even bigger. Standing in front of those blazing stars, he couldn't see the end of them. Yin Nuoxing felt as insignificant as a speck of dust. He found a dazzling, blazing star on the 9th layer of the celestial domain. It flickered with a beautiful purple radiance, and its temperature was many times higher than the other blazing stars he had seen. Even standing a few million li away, Yin Nuoxing could feel the blazing heat. The temperature of this blazing star might not be lower than some of the divine flames ranked in the 50s or 60s. If he didn't release the power of the stars to protect himself, with his strength as a half-step demon, he might be burned to ashes when he approached a million li away. Strands of starlight quietly appeared. Yin Nuoxing looked at this blazing star, and the light element brought him with it in a flash. He rushed to a spot 500,000 miles away from the purple star. Then, he slowly approached until he was 300,000 miles away. Yin Nuoxing felt an extremely powerful gravitational force pulling at him. Only then did he retreat a little and sit down cross-legged. The surging power of the stars lingered around his body, blocking the all-pervasive heat. He took out the nether void sword and hung it on his back. He also took out the swirling zither and placed it between his legs. Yin Nuoxing didn't use the swirling zither or the divine flames to block the heat. He wanted to feel it himself. In this place filled with the power of laws, elemental energy, willpower, and star energy, there was nothing better than experiencing it himself. Chapter 523. In the pitch-black and boundless space, countless stars twinkled with resplendent light. They tried to tear the darkness apart, but to no avail. Those blazing stars, those strange rocky stars, and those filled with violent winds silently revolved in this lonely and dark star domain. It had been like this since time immemorial, and there was no change at all. In the high-level star domain, a huge purple star was extremely dazzling in the star domain. That purple light was extremely bright even from hundreds of millions of kilometers away. Even the 9th layer of the star domain, it was still an extremely huge star. And at this moment, in front of this incomparably huge star, there was a tiny figure that didn't attract any attention sitting there. His body was wrapped in the flame energy from the purple star, causing his entire body to glow with purple light. If he was moved to a dark place from here, he would discover that this fellow was also glowing, just like an extremely tiny star. At this moment, this person's body was emitting faint starlight, and a fiery red energy was churning on the surface of his body. If one looked closely, they would discover that this crimson energy was slowly absorbing the purple energy around his body, causing him to be dyed in a gorgeous shade of purple. This person was naturally Yin Nuoxing. From the day he closed his eyes, a month had already passed. In this month, he frantically extracted the star energy in the star domain, and even extracted the blazing energy from the purple star in front of him. At the same time, he constantly released the star energy to resist the high temperature. Dense beads of sweat continuously dripped down from his forehead, and the black clothes on his body became wet and dry. Purple flames lingered on his body, making him look like he was on fire. This month was torture for him. He thought that with 2 divine flames, he wouldn't be afraid of the high temperature anymore. Even if he cultivated here, he would be able to adapt quickly. In the end, it was as if he was being fried in a high-temperature fire zone. No, it was as if he was being boiled in high-temperature water. With his somewhat weak willpower, he bitterly persevered for a month. Along the way, there were many times when he thought of quitting, but he stubbornly persevered. Even though he was very uncomfortable, especially when he discovered that his originally rapid cultivation speed had once again soared to the limit, he was even more desperately enduring the torment. Brother Nuashing, stop. Just as Yin Nuashing felt that he was about to break through to the next level, an anxious and pleasant voice sounded in his heart. It made him tremble violently, and his handsome face turned slightly pale. The most feared thing when cultivating was to be disturbed by others. Even if the spiritual physique diverted a bit of his attention to do some small things during cultivation, he would still be afraid of being disturbed. Lon Xian's spiritual call almost caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood. However, even though he was slightly injured, Yin Nuashing only frowned. He didn't blame Xian. He knew that this girl wouldn't disturb him if there was nothing important. Since something could make her so anxious, something must have happened. He could only stop cultivating. The light elements suddenly swept him towards the distance, and he landed on a rocky star. After leaving that blazing hell, the surrounding temperature suddenly became much more normal. After resting for a while, Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. His consciousness entered his soul with some trembling. As soon as he came out, his eyes widened. When he realized that Ziyi was not beside him, he heaved a sigh of relief. When he turned his gaze, he saw that Xian was not far away. She seemed to be very happy to see him, and she skipped over to him. Brother Nuashing, Lon Xian suddenly threw herself into Yin Nuashing's embrace. Her two jade arms tightly wrapped around his waist. Yin Nuashing's heart warmed slightly. He gently pulled her into his embrace and heard her abrupt sigh of relief. Fortunately, I didn't break into the demonic realm, just a little bit more. Lon Xian raised her head. A trace of relief flashed across her pure and beautiful face. She looked at Yin Nuashing's puzzled eyes with lingering fear. She softly said, Brother Nuashing, do you still remember the path of the demonic realm that we told you before? Yin Nuashing nodded and said, the path of the demonic realm is divided into demonic realm and demonic realm. The former is the path taken by ordinary cultivators, while the latter is very dangerous. Lon Xian nodded. She leaned her head on Yin Nuashing's shoulder and said in a very soft voice, almost as if she was talking in her sleep, we don't want Brother Nuashing to break into the demonic realm too early. Even as long as the hidden danger in Brother Nuashing's body is not removed, would rather Brother Nuashing not break into the demonic realm. Yin Nuashing's body trembled. A strange expression flashed across his face. He clenched his fists. Only then did he discover in astonishment that he did not know when he had reached the demonic realm's 9th refinement stage. The amount of star energy in his body had increased by an unknown number of times. Furthermore, it was denser. There were even more stars twinkling in the black energy. If he wanted to break into the demonic realm, it would only take a short while the realm is so fast. Yin Nuashing could not help but sigh. This cultivation speed was really too terrifying. In 3 months, he had reached the demonic realm's 9th refinement stage from the immortal realm's 9th refinement stage. If this news were to spread, it would probably frighten people to death. After reaching the demonic realm, in addition to accumulating a large amount of energy, one also needs to have a certain level of comprehension and cultivation. Only then can one break into the next realm. However, with Brother Nuashing's current level of comprehension, not to mention the demonic realm or the demonic realm, even the divine realm could be easily broken through. But the demonic realm, Lon Xian's soft voice made Yin Nuashing's heart tremble slightly. This breakthrough was completely involuntary. He even felt that if he were to cultivate here for 3 years, he would be able to reach the demigod level or even the initial divine level. In this place, with the endless power of the stars and the endless power of the elements, it was a paradise for the divine body with spiritual reception. I understand. Thank you, Xian. Yin Nuashing patted Lon Xian's head and sighed. If it were not for her in that state, he might have really broken through to the demonic realm in one go. Lon Xian smiled happily and then shook her head. She buried her face in Yin Nuashing's chest and murmured softly, after dozens of eras in the divine realm, only Brother Nuashing is Xian's family. Brother Nuashing is Xian's only one. This is the only place where Exine can stay. So, please don't say thank you to Exine, okay? Yin Nuashing was slightly stunned. After being together for so many years, he had even forgotten that Exine was a soul that had been released from the holy celestial crystal. He had even forgotten that she was an orphan from the mythological era who had been sealed for almost 100 years. After a long, long sleep and a long wait, she had finally met him. She had finally spoken the language of the gods and had been residing in his soul ever since. Thinking of this, Yin Nuashing could not help but feel a lump in his throat. He hugged the person in his arms tighter and nodded heavily. Okay. Lan Exin smiled sweetly and gently extricated herself from his arms. She smiled playfully at Yin Nuashing, which made his eyes light up. Then he heard her say, Brother Nuashing can't continue to cultivate, but Exin has a lot of things to teach Brother Nuashing. The Void Technique is also a holy celestial heart sutra. It can greatly enhance one's control over the power of space. In Xian time, it was a heart sutra that was coveted by many. Even a few big countries did not hesitate to start a war. After saying that, she did not wait for Yin Nuashing's response. She held his hand and walked out of the divine realm. Yin Nuashing looked at the exquisite figure in front of him and smiled silently. He felt very warm in his heart. Someone depended on him. It felt so good. When the two of them arrived in the divine realm, they were not in a hurry to start cultivating. Instead, they searched the galaxy in the ninth heaven. The Void Technique was related to the cultivation of the power of space. Since there were so many stars in the galaxy, there should also be stars related to the power of space. After passing by many huge stars, Yin Nuashing even saw a star. It was full of magic arrays. Even its core was a core formed by hundreds of billions of magic arrays. The two of them were very surprised that there was such a strange thing in this world. After secretly memorizing the location of this magic array star, Yin Nuashing and Lan Exin continued to search. Finally, after a day, they found it. Silver blue power formed a storm that wreaked havoc on the star. The core of this star was a mass of the power of space. As for the interior of the star, it was empty. There was only an endless amount of silver blue power of space flowing inside, creating a supersonic spatial storm. Yin Nuashing wanted to sit down cross-legged outside this silver blue star. However, Lan Exin pulled him directly. A terrifying power of space exploded from her petite body. Yin Nuashing almost fainted. However, a surge of silver blue power flowed into his body through her small hand, allowing him to catch his breath. Yin Nuashing looked at Lan Exin who was pulling him along as they flew side by side. He looked at the two hands that were holding each other. Yin Nuashing unconsciously squeezed them. They were soft and boneless, and her skin was like congealed fat. They were so smooth that he wanted to take a bite out of them. They felt very good to the touch. Lan Exin blushed slightly. However, she did not stop him. Instead, she tightened her grip on his hand. After seeing the expression on Lan Exin's face, Yin Nuashing laughed embarrassedly and did not move anymore. Lan Exin brought Yin Nuashing to a place not far away from the core of the power of space. Only then did she stop. The power of space emanating from her petite body calmed down the violent power of space around her. The power of space here was so dense that it was frightening. Yin Nuashing did not doubt that even a divine king would be torn to shreds if he entered here. If not for Lan Exin's power of space, he would not have been able to enter this place. Even with the two divine flames, it would have been very difficult. However, Lan Exin did not dare to let go of Yin Nuashing. She was worried that if she did, the frightening power of space would kill Yin Nuashing, who was not prepared for it at all. The two of them sat very close to each other. Their knees were pressed against each other. Lan Exin's power of space flowed through Yin Nuashing's body. Only then did Yin Nuashing feel relieved. Then, a fragment of his soul gushed out from between his eyebrows and entered his mind. A huge amount of information flooded in like a tidal wave. At the same time, in the starry door, the Mountain King explained the matter of the starry door clearly. When he saw Xian and the others pushing the door open with all their might, his gaze softened. The younger generation would surpass the older generation. This group of people had pushed open the door to the 8th or 9th level. Huiji, in particular, saw that Yao Hua and the others had pushed open the door to the 9th level. Although he knew that his limit was the 8th level, he still pushed open the door to the 9th level with all his might. When they entered and saw the dazzling starry sky, everyone was shocked and excited. Yun Nuoxing's long-cherished wish to travel in the star region. Of course, they wanted to set foot in the star region. However, they could not go to the star region until they reached the initial god level. Now that they saw the dazzling galaxy here, they felt that they could die without regrets. It would have been great to bring my sister and the others here. Yuanxi could not help but sigh. Then, he looked strangely at the Mountain King, who was chuckling beside him. He still could not understand why he had allowed them to inherit and cultivate, and even brought them to such a wonderful place. Senior Mountain, do you know where Little Star is? Xian bowed slightly and asked the Mountain King. The Mountain King smiled and nodded. Then, he pointed to a spot above and smiled. That little guy is in a star that contains the power of space. He is creating a miracle. Miracle? Everyone was stunned. Then, they were shocked. What kind of magnificent feat was it to make such a person say such a word? Half-demonic, rank 9 transformation stage. He has begun to control the power of space. This is something that can only be achieved when one reaches the initial god level. Don't you think it's a miracle? The Mountain King chuckled. What? Everyone was stunned. They quickly dug their ears and widened their eyes, suspecting that they had heard wrongly. He has begun to control the power of space. The Mountain King added, No. The first sentence, that kid is already at the half-demonic rank 9 transformation stage. The Mountain King smiled. To reach the half-demonic rank 9 transformation stage in 3 months, and to be able to advance to the demonic rank at any time, this speed shocked him. No. Oh my God. Can this guy be any faster? Can't he wait for us? Sick. Demon. Monster. Demon in human form. Chapter 524. Even Yun Nuoxing, who was deep in cultivation, couldn't help but sneeze loudly after being talked about by more than 10 people at the same time. He even shivered and had goosebumps. However, he was now in a very strange state. His realm wasn't high enough, so he couldn't control the power of space. This was without a doubt, and everyone agreed that this was the case. Unless he had a very special constitution, he would be born with the power of space. For example, Zero, the illusory time body. He would be born with the power of time and space. Even if he couldn't use them accurately, he was strong enough to threaten the Emperor of the Netherworld. And this special physique seemed to include the Yun Nuo planet. The spirit receiving divine body devoured all kinds of energy. Elemental energy, immortal chi, devil chi, divine primordial spirit, 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 divine primordial spirit. These were all energy. And as long as it was energy, the spirit receiving divine body would not reject it. The energy in this star with the power of space was very violent. It was so violent that it couldn't be any more violent. If a beginner god entered, he would be killed without hesitation. Therefore, even if Yun Nuoxing had the godly body of a receptive spirit, he didn't dare to let the violent space energy rush in. His body would be directly destroyed by the violent energy. Even though Yun Nuoxing had successfully cultivated the void technique, he didn't dare to directly swallow the power of space outside. However, he also knew that if he could really absorb a large part of the power of space and completely refine it, his control and understanding of the power of space would reach a new level. However, the two of them didn't dare to take the risk. Yun Nuoxing could only carefully refine the power of space from Lon Exiner. He couldn't borrow the power of space outside, but it could help him quickly understand it. It wouldn't be long before he could show the greedy nature of the spiritual, receiving godly body. While Yun Nuashing was immersed in cultivating the power of space, Xian and the others had also arrived at the 9th level of the Milky Way. Xueqing had only pushed open the door to the 8th level, so Xue Gu and the others had stayed behind to accompany her. In the end, as soon as they said this, the three of them were unceremoniously thrown up to the 9th level of the Milky Way by Xueqing. Furthermore, she had kicked them up to the 9th level of the Milky Way. Everyone found the silver blue star. Although they were curious, they did not dare to get too close to it. The spatial power that was spreading out was extremely destructive. As little immortals, it would be very serious if they came into contact with it. The shop owner was about to reach the demon stage. How can I fall behind? No, I can't fall behind. I can't. Nightmare only took a glance before roaring and running away, rushing to other places in the star field. He was eager to attack the demon rank. Everyone, let's also prepare to break through. The energy here is dozens of times denser than outside. If nothing goes wrong, we will be able to reach the half-demon stage soon. Little Star is about to reach the demon stage. We can't show any weakness, right? Yuanqi shrugged and smiled. Charge. Attack the half-demon stage. That way, when we go back, those old guys can't say anything. The time has passed. Yao Hua suddenly thought of something and shuddered violently. He still remembered that Jin Jinwang had said that they would reach the half-demon stage in 10 years. Now, 10 years had passed, but they were still in the 8th level of the immortal stage. If they went back and found out, they would probably be hung up and beaten. Cultivate. Half-demon stage. No, I want to break through to the demon stage. King Hell, I forgot that 10 years have passed a long time ago. Demon stage. Demon stage. Oh, seeing Yao Hua and the others disappear into the star field like a group of demons, Xian and the others nodded and scattered in the star field to find a suitable star to break through. Xian looked back at the silver blue star. Mei Mao smiled and said to herself, "Little star, you can do it. When we come out, I will definitely surpass you." In the distance, the great mountain king clearly saw that everyone would look at the silver blue star when they left. He couldn't help but chuckle. It seemed that the child was their soul. Inside the silver blue star, Yun Nuashing naturally didn't know that Xian and the others had arrived, but he guessed that they should be here soon. As for whether they wanted to break through to the half-demon stage or even the demon stage, he wasn't worried at all. Whether it was the energy here or the form of the energy, it was enough for everyone to cultivate until they reached the demon stage. When you reach the half-demon stage, you have to understand the energy and re-examine the existence of the energy. It's not just the form, but also the way to use the energy and the understanding of the energy. All of this directly affects your combat power. Yin Nuashing thought to himself. But according to Lan Xnr, the so-called understanding was enough for him to break through to the God stage. He didn't have to worry about it. And when it came to understanding energy, the energy carrier was a crystal. It couldn't be any worse than a solid one. As a result, he settled down and cultivated the void technique with all his might. His understanding and mastery of spatial force increased rapidly, and he even attempted to devour the spatial force outside. This cultivation speed surprised Lan Xi. Her cherry lips were slightly agape because of her surprise. She even watched as Yun Nuashing's use of the power of space improved. She could directly observe the effect of his gradual mastery of the power of space on the power of space in this place. Did the God Spirit Blood Pulse create the receptive Spirit God Body, or did the receptive Spirit God Body affect the God Spirit Blood Pulse? Lan Xian kept mumbling. The God Spirit Blood Pulse could give birth to a strange body. From that point of view, she didn't know if the receptive Spirit God Body had appeared because of the God Spirit Blood Pulse. Brother Nuashing is using the power of space to refine his body. Seeing the silver blue energy enter Yin Nuashing's body and spread through his body, it was gradually being consumed by his body. Lan Xnr was shocked. but she was numb to it. It had been so many years. Whatever Yanuashing didn't surprise her, because he was a strange guy to begin with. She quietly watched for a long time. After seeing that Yanuashing wasn't having any accidents, she gently nodded. Mei Mao closed her eyes and started to practice. Even though she was only left with a soul, she couldn't increase her level. She could only practice her soul power. But there was a lot of space power there. It helped her control of the power of space to another level. Cultivation was extremely dry and dull. It was a battle that wore away one's patience. Since ancient times, the Almighties had always been extraordinarily patient. They would cultivate in seclusion for months or even years in order to obtain greater power. As for gods, a single seclusion would allow them to comprehend and gain enlightenment in an instant. However, it would take them hundreds or even thousands of years. As for high-level gods, they could spend millions of years in seclusion. God spirits closed their eyes, and the world changed. In the galaxy, a yellow-robed figure gently raised his head. He had finished his comprehension. There was a smile in his eyes. He couldn't help but murmur, this group of little guys broke through to the demon level in just half a year after entering the galaxy. The figure was the Mountain King. Since Xian and the others entered the galaxy, half a year had passed. But to him, it was as if he had just closed his eyes. Another one too. This group of little guys can't stand the loneliness. They want to break through as a group. The Mountain King stood up with a smile. As he stood up, he felt another 7 or 8 auras rushing to the demon level. In the galaxy, the demon aura was rolling. 2 months ago, a few of the little guys succeeded. Now, the 9 united children have succeeded. Why is that child still half demon level 9? The Mountain King's deep eyes reflected the stars and swept across the galaxy. Although he couldn't see anyone, he seemed to be able to see the group of people who were far away. When he saw Yunuashing, he was a little surprised. Why didn't this girl change? The power of space. She has already condensed the origin of space. TSK. A half-demon level little guy has actually grasped the power of space that is comparable to a god underworld master. Just based on her understanding of the power of space, she is invincible among those below the initial god level. The spiritual godly physique is indeed the strongest physique in the world. The Mountain King smiled and stroked the tuft of beard on his chin. Back then, this group of little guys came for the secret realm. Unknowingly, they have been cultivating for almost a year. The Mountain King mumbled to himself, once they have stabilized, I will send them there. I wonder if anyone has found the secret treasure inside. Now that the demon world is restless, there are many demonic cultivators in the Pantheon world. Are they planning to invade the Pantheon world again? No one heard the Mountain King's mumbling. At this moment, everyone was stabilizing their cultivation level, except for a certain someone who was cultivating in seclusion in the Silver Blue Star. Lan Xen opened her eyes from Mei Mao and looked at Yin Nuashing with joy. In half a year, he had cultivated the void technique to such a level. Moreover, his cultivation level was not enough to control the power of space. Such talent, even in their clan, was second to none. I wonder what kind of peerless girl Brother Nuashing will marry in the future. Lan Xen inexplicably thought of this. However, she quickly shook her head with a bitter smile. Yin Nuashing's heartless was not a bluff. Perhaps he didn't know it himself. However, Lan Xen and the others had always lived in his soul. They knew him better than he knew himself. How could they not know what was going on? However, even if they knew, there was nothing they could do. The more I look at you, the more beautiful you look. Lan Xen blinked her eyes from Mei Mao. She smiled as she stared at Yin Nuashing. She gently stretched out her hand and stroked his face. Then she stood up and looked at the huge solid core behind him, which was formed by the power of space. The solid core of the space origin star. It is said that if one can refine a solid crystal formed by the condensation of a type of energy, one will have a pass to that level. I wonder if it is true or not. Lan Xen whispered to herself. She was born in the mythological era and knew many secrets that the people of this era did not know. Mei Mao was a little dignified. Lan Xian could not help but lift her foot and walk towards the core. A rich power of space flowed out from her delicate body and blocked the invading power of space outside. The distance of 1,000 miles felt very long to Lan Xian. It seemed that she could not reach the inn no matter how hard she walked. However, with every step she took, she would advance a large distance or retreat a large distance. She kept walking in that direction, but it was difficult for her to get close. Am I not completely aware that I cannot get close to the space origin? Or do I need to completely control the space origin? Lan Xian sighed. However, she kept walking in that direction. Her body moved forward and backward at times. If one observed carefully, it seemed that every time she moved forward, she would move back a little more. Chapter 5:25. Lan Xian did not know how much time had passed. It could have been 10 days or half a month. She stopped in front of the space origin crystal. She looked at the space origin crystal, which was many times bigger than her. She could not help but sigh. During this period of time, she had felt that it was difficult to move such a large piece of the space origin crystal. I want to try. Lan Xian bit her red lips with her white teeth and nodded firmly. She slowly stretched out her jade-like hand, inch by inch, towards the space origin crystal. Boom! However, before she could touch it, a terrifying space power suddenly exploded and slammed into her jade-like hand. However, Lan Xian was prepared. A silver blue light flowed on the surface of her jade-like hand, and the space power did not cause her any harm. The space power rolled in from all directions. It was not directed at Lan Xian. It was just the space origin crystal that had been stimulated and was releasing its own pressure. Lan Xian continued to wave her jade-like hand, and a strange wave swept across the void. When the wave came into contact with the violent space storm, it calmed it down. However, this storm was only a small wave in the sea of space power. The entire star is in chaos. Sensing the movement of the entire star, Mei Mao's expression changed slightly. She turned her head and looked at Yun Nuoxing, who was thousands of miles away. She saw that he was swaying around in the silver-blue sea like a rootless duckweed. However, this was not because Yun Nuoxing was being swept away, but because the chaotic space power was constantly changing the space he was in. If this continued, he did not even know where he would be thrown. Lan Xian gritted her teeth. Her jade-like hand suddenly crossed the distance of less than half a foot and pressed directly on the space origin crystal. Buzz! At that moment, Lan Xian felt as if the entire space was roaring and wailing. The frightening power of space had gone out of control and was rampaging within the entire planet. Streaks of chaotic power of space radiated out into the starfield. Fortunately, Xian and the others were cultivating far away from the silver-blue planet, so they were not affected. Lan Xian's expression changed, and she quickly retracted her hand. However, the space force seemed to have locked onto her and exploded on the surface of the origin source. Like a tsunami, the space force rushed towards Lan Xian. Even though Lan Xian was very proficient in the power of space, she still couldn't help but turn pale. Her hands formed a seal at lightning speed, and a shout suddenly came from her mouth. Void escape. As soon as she finished speaking, a force of space wrapped around her body, causing her to become illusory in the blink of an eye. In Lan Xian's line of sight, she saw a pitch-black void. She was directly dragged into the void by the strong force of space. Poof! However, the ferocious and concentrated spatial energy ignored the boundaries of space and distance. Even though Lan Xian was in the empty space, she was still swept by the ferocious spatial energy, causing her delicate body to become much more illusory. A huge force hit Lan Xian's body like a battering ram. She was knocked out of the void space. Her body appeared outside the space original crystal, and she was sent flying. Xian. The sudden anxious voice caused Lan Xin's beautiful eyes to be startled. Before she could stabilize her body, she felt that she had crashed into a warm embrace. At the same time, she was fiercely flying backwards with this embrace. The huge force was unable to be dispelled by the figure behind her. The two of them flew out for thousands of miles before they managed to stop in the sea of Space Force. Hearing the sigh of relief behind her, Mei Mao blamed herself. She quickly turned around in the embrace and looked at Yin Nuoxing. She said, "Brother Nuoxing," however, before she could finish her sentence, Yin Nuoxing flicked her forehead. Lan Xin'er was stunned for a moment. "Girl, what are you doing?" Yin Nuoxing could not help but roll his eyes at her. The space storm was too terrifying. It had directly awakened him from his deep seclusion. "Brother Nuoxing," when Lan Xin heard this, Mei Mao blamed herself. She clenched her fists tightly and trembled. After hesitating for a moment, she seemed to muster up her courage. She took a deep breath and looked straight at Yin Nuoxing. She opened her mouth slightly. Just as she was about to speak, a warm palm covered her mouth. Her expression froze. The hesitation in your heart is vividly displayed. Yin Nuoxing covered her mouth and shook his head helplessly. He said, "If you don't want to say it, don't say it. Brother Nuoxing will not force you. Everyone has their little secrets." When Lan X heard this, she was stunned again. Mei Mao looked at Yin Nuoxing in a daze. Suddenly she smiled. Her smile was very charming. Yin Nuoxing's eyes lit up. This smile made the surrounding silver blue light dim. "Brother Nuoxing," Lan Xin smiled foolishly. Her red lips moved forward. When Yin Nuoxing was not paying attention, she lightly kissed his face. Then, she quickly retracted her hand. Her face was red. She continued to smile and said, "I really want to give birth to your children." Yin Nuoxing was so shocked by this hand that his soul was trembling. Then, when he heard this sentence, his handsome face was so red that it was steamed. After a long time, he came back to his senses and rolled his eyes at her. He didn't know what to say. Seeing that he was embarrassed, helpless, and a little happy, Lan Xer giggled. She imitated Ziyi and pinched his handsome face. Then she said, "But I still have to say it." After organizing her thoughts for a moment, Lan Xer slowly said those words. She did not hide a single word. Yin Nuoxing was now the person closest to her. She did not want to hide anything from him. Crystallization of the energy source. When he heard this, Yin Nuoxing's eyes flashed with surprise. Energy did not have a physical form. It was illusory, except for some elements that could become physical, such as the ice element. The rest of the elemental energies were illusory. If a strong force was used to condense it into other forms, such as Yin Nuoxing's usual elemental energy, it would only last for a short period of time. Once there was no more energy to support it, it would dissipate. "Do you want it?" Yin Nuoxing nodded. The Netherworld Ruins sword appeared in his hand. Ling Hongjian also appeared beside him. "Brother Nuoxing, forget it. You can't get it." When Lan Xin saw this action, she did not know what he was thinking. She quickly pressed Yin Nuoxing's hand down and shook her head. Yin Nuoxing thought about it and felt that it was true. The crystallization of the space source was as big as a large city. Without a special storage device, it would be impossible to store it. After resting for a while, Lan Xin returned to his soul. Yin Nuoxing had already mastered the void technique. The power of space here would not cause him any harm. However, after being ravaged by the space storm just now, his soul had become a little transparent. Looking at the dazzling space behind him, Yin Nuoxing stared at the huge core in the distance and shook his head. His body was enveloped by the silver-blue power of space. After a while, he disappeared from his original spot. Half-demon rank 9 refinement stage. Don't advance first. Those guys should have broken through to the demon rank by now. In the star field, Yin Nuoxing's figure appeared. He looked around and then flew toward the place. "I don't lack mystic technique Heart Sutras now. However, I don't have many mystic techniques. Fortunately, the mystic technique Heart Sutras I have learned come with 1 or 2 sets of mystic techniques. I don't have to worry about not having a way to deal with my enemies. It's just that my mystic techniques are slightly more advanced. Yin Nuashing lowered his head and looked at his palms. He clenched his fists slightly, and his body disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already hundreds of miles away. Phew! Fortunately, I have the void technique. Using the power of space does not consume so much energy. When I can control the power of space more accurately, I should be able to use it like my elemental power. I don't need to consume the power of the stars. For now, I'll just make do with it. Seeing that he was hundreds of miles away with just a thought, Yin Nuashing could not help but smile. However, after a while, he shook his head. He was not satisfied. If the king of the mountains knew what he was thinking, he would probably slap him unconscious. If he was not satisfied with being able to control the power of space at the half-demon rank, how could those gods endure it? I'm here. 10 minutes later, Yin Nuashing stopped. He looked at the huge star not far in front of him that was made up of magic arrays. Without much hesitation, he rushed in. Inside the star, made up of magic arrays. Magic arrays were flickering nonstop. Magic arrays were constantly being formed, and there were also magic arrays that collapsed and dissipated. The energy nurtured inside was very special. It was very suitable to be used to weave magic arrays. Moreover, it would strengthen the magic arrays. Yin Nuashing came to the core of the star. It was the gathering place of magic arrays. There were trillions of magic arrays wrapped around this ball that did not have a physical body. Outside the ball, there were thick energy array lines that extended out like a cocoon. Can I go in? Yin Nuashing originally wanted to sit down and cultivate not far away from the sphere, but when he saw the incomparably huge core, his heart palpitated a little. He hesitated for a while, hesitated again and again, then nodded fiercely and walked towards the incomparably huge core. Yin Nuashing looked up. He was standing very close to the core, so he could not see how huge it was. He took a deep breath and suddenly reached out his hand to slap the dazzling magic array. Yin Nuashing originally thought that the palm would directly pass through, but the slender palm directly slapped on the array, causing Yin Nuashing to be stunned. Before he could recover from his shock, this huge array ball suddenly split open a crack that was about 10 feet wide. Two thick energy matrices shot out from within at an extremely fast speed, instantly wrapping around Yin Nuashing's waist. Wait! Yin Nuashing's expression changed drastically. He took a step back and wanted to retreat. However, the two energy matrices suddenly pulled him and rushed into the core of the formation. He was so shocked that he couldn't even say a word. When he was about to enter, his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. After Yin Nuashing was swallowed into the core, the crack that was about 10 feet wide quietly closed. There was no trace of it. If one stood far enough away, they would not even be able to see what was happening. The magic array star I saw in the depths of the star field contained a very mysterious energy. Using this energy to weave a magic array could increase its power and make it easier to weave a magic array successfully. At that time, many god-level magic array masters only cultivated outside the star. No one dared to enter it. The great mountain monarch opened his eyes and looked at the 9-layered star river. He could not help but smile. Although I imprinted it here, no one has ever touched it. What a lucky kid. I wonder what they will think. Chapter 5:26. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, Yin Nuashing and the others had already stayed in the palace for a year. They cultivated, comprehended, and battled. The flames of war were still raging in the secret realm. Today, they found a secret treasure. Tomorrow, they dug out a palace. The conflicts between the various forces were getting more and more intense. However, Yin Nuashing and the others seemed to have forgotten their purpose in coming here. In the magnificent palace, there was a courtyard that was very unique. In broad daylight, 2 stars hung high in the sky. However, starlight shone down on this place. Looking up, one could see the bright stars twinkling in the dark sky. Below this region of the starry sky, there was a very ordinary-looking tree. However, there were crystal-like fruits on the tree. When a gentle breeze blew, The crystals collided with each other and made a crisp, tinkling sound. A small river that was only 10 feet wide drew a circle around this place and then flowed into the distance. On this small island that had been divided, a dozen young boys and girls were sitting quietly in front of a stone table under a big tree. Cups of hot tea emitted a very unique tea fragrance. Just a light sniff would make one feel as if they were floating in the air. The middle-aged man sat in front of the stone table. With a wave of his hand, a crystal fell from the tree and accurately landed in the teapot. It was submerged in the boiling water and quickly disappeared. The transparent boiling water in the teapot was stained with a bit of green. The color was the same as the crystal that fell from the tree. The pleasant tinkling sound was like a swaying wind chime. The quiet river also made a soft sound. It was obviously still, but there was the sound of flowing water. Phew! After a long time, the white-robed youth came back to his senses. He looked at the big tree in front of him and then at the passage in the distance. Then, he raised his teacup and took another sip. He tasted it carefully and was so comfortable that his eyes rolled back. Senior Mountain, are these tea leaves the fruits of the soul crystal tree? Yuanshi finally could not help but ask after taking another sip of tea. The middle-aged man raised his head and looked at the big tree beside him with a smile. He also raised his teacup and took a sip. He said, "Did you find anything?" Yuanshi nodded and let out a long sigh of relief. His eyes were still rolling. It seemed that he was really not far from becoming an immortal. I can feel my soul being tempered. It feels as though I have been cultivating for many years. If I cultivate now, my cultivation base might even rise to another level, Yao Hua said, intoxicated. The cultivation of the demonic rank focuses more on the control of power. Demonic chi, elemental energy, soul energy, and mental energy. For you to be able to successfully advance in one go, there's no need to talk about the purity of the elements. Furthermore, your soul energy and elemental energy have already begun to fuse. When the two powers are completely fused and can sense each other, you can step into the demigod rank. Soul crystals can temper one's soul, making it easier for one's soul power to fuse with elemental energy. They can also allow one to enter a state of enlightenment. The Mountain King's words caused everyone to open their eyes. They couldn't help but take another sip. The soul crystal tree was rare. In the outside world, a soul crystal the size of 2 fingers was equivalent to 500 kilograms of premium glazed crystal, which was equivalent to 6 million gold coins. As for the soul crystals on this tree, each soul crystal was as thick as 3 fingers and as long as a palm. Who knew how much it could be sold for? When Xian heard this, she silently put down the cup in her hand. Mei Mao looked at the passage of the palace. Such a divine item should have some effect on Little Star, right? When a Mountain King saw this, he seemed to have thought of something. He couldn't help but laugh. Drink to your heart's content. There's plenty here. It's not like your little lover will miss a cup. Hearing this, a few people directly spat out their tea. Xian's pretty face was completely red. She quickly lowered her head. Mei Mao's eyes flickered slightly. When everyone saw this, they couldn't help but smile bitterly in their hearts. This Mountain King even knew how to joke. Why hasn't Little Star come out yet? Jining wiped her mouth and couldn't help but ask. That child had some fortuitous encounters. He should be coming out soon. The Mountain King smiled. When he talked about Yun Nuoxing, his gaze would become somewhat gentle. It was as if he was talking about his own junior. Then, he thought of something and said, "You guys have to pray that he doesn't choose to break through. Otherwise, he might be a demigod when he comes out." This time, everyone spat out their tea. Xian and the other girls choked and coughed violently. Their pretty faces were a little red. Half a demigod? Nightmare's reaction was the most intense. She jumped up and widened her eyes as if she wanted to dig them out. Of course, it's also possible that he won't break through. Don't you guys still want to go to the mystic realm? The Mountain King smiled and looked at everyone with a teasing gaze. Everyone was stunned, and then they all laughed bitterly. After cultivating in seclusion for a year, they had forgotten about the secret realm. But fortunately, although their cultivation had improved a lot, none of them had broken through the devil rank. That way, they wouldn't be restricted from entering the secret realm. However, everyone was quite shocked just now. The Mountain King's words weren't baseless. Since he said so, it meant that Yun Nuoxing could break through to the demigod realm in a year in the most violent way. She might even be able to break through to the demigod realm before she was 100 years old. Hiss. Thinking of this, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. To become a god in 100 years, that was a little scary, how leisurely. Just as everyone was scaring themselves, a light laughter came from the space. Everyone was stunned. They found the source of the sound and turned around quickly. They saw that on the empty seat beside Xian, a handsome young man in black clothes had appeared out of nowhere. He was holding a teacup and taking a sip. Then, he couldn't help but let out a moan. He seemed to be quite comfortable. Little Star, seeing the person who appeared beside him, Xian cried out in joy. As for Yuan Shi and the others, they stared at him with their eyes wide open. Phew! That's good, that's good. Demigod, 9th cycle transformation. That's not right. Why haven't you broken through to the demigod realm? Could it be that you've encountered another barrier? Seeing Yun Nuoxing calmly drinking tea, Yuan Shi and the others couldn't help but ask at once. If he was still a demigod 9th cycle transformation, then he would be the one with the lowest cultivation in the group. Their group of more than 10 people had all broken through to the demigod realm. Yes, there's a slight problem with my body. I'm currently suppressing my realm. If I break through to the demigod realm, there might be some side effects. Therefore, breaking through or not doesn't affect me that much. Yun Nuoxing smiled indifferently. To him, it didn't matter whether he broke through to the demigod realm or not. Small success in controlling the power of space. I'm afraid that with your power of space, you'll be invincible among demigods. Of course, breaking through to the demigod realm isn't that important to you. As long as you want to, you can break through to the demigod realm anytime. The Mountain Emperor's eyes were so sharp that he immediately saw through Yun Nuoxing. The moment they heard this, Yuan Shi and the others smiled bitterly. He had really managed to grasp the power of space. Furthermore, he had already achieved a small success in it. What sort of monster was this guy? As for the problem with your body, why don't you tell me and see if I can solve it for you? The Mountain Emperor took a sip of tea and said indifferently. Hearing this, Yun Nuoxing's expression turned slightly sluggish. His silver-purple eyes turned slightly and looked at Xian and the others. He then looked at Jin Ying and Xueqing. After pondering for a while, he nodded. Anyway, the people here were his best friends. They wouldn't expose him. Although Jin Ying and the others might tell Jin Wang and the others, they would have to say it sooner or later. Even if they didn't, Yun Nuoxing would say it himself. Thinking of this, Yun Nuoxing naturally didn't have any scruples. He directly explained the situation, but he hid a part of the reason. Little Star, didn't you say that the vengeful spirit wouldn't have any effect on you? When he finished speaking, Yuan Shi was the first to react. He quickly asked, I thought it wouldn't have any effect. Ziyi and Xionaire's seal shouldn't have any problems. Yun Nuoxing shook his head with a bitter smile. But now, Qin Yin said in a low voice, a grim expression appearing on her face. Now that the evil spirit has broken free from your shadow, it's attacking you instead. The demon qi in your soul and mind is getting stronger and stronger. Compared to the shock and surprise of the others, Xian was relatively calm. She had seen Yun Nuoxing's seal a long time ago. It was very scary and ferocious. Can I see the seal mark? The Mountain Emperor asked softly. He was very casual and didn't put on airs at all. Therefore, he got along very well with everyone in the past year. Yun Nuoxing was stunned when he heard that. He looked deeply at the Mountain Emperor. The Mountain Emperor also looked at him and revealed a very amiable smile. Yun Nuoxing sighed helplessly. You guys can leave first. Yun Nuoxing turned his head and said to Xian and the others. However, he really didn't want Xian and the others to see him. He thought that everyone would be very cooperative, but Yuan Shi's gaze froze. He glared fiercely at Yun Nuoxing and roared, Men, suppress him. Oh, everyone sneered. The demonic aura on their bodies went berserk. The elemental energy in their hands surged out violently, causing Yun Nuoshing to shiver. Stop, stop, stop. Sai, I'm afraid of you. Just don't say that you're scared later. Yun Nuoshing laughed bitterly and quickly raised his hands in surrender. He couldn't be too heavy-handed, could he? After laughing bitterly for a while, Shuiyan gently wiped his handsome face with his palm. The blue light on Shuiyan's skin flashed and disappeared. His original face was revealed. Half of his beautiful face was now covered in black runes. His eyes had become a very ferocious blood-red color. Even the whites of his eyes were gone. There was only a red light that flickered. Even though everyone was mentally prepared, they couldn't help but gasp. Even a mountain monarch's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. It can be used to intimidate the enemy, the mountain emperor said calmly. The mountain emperor looked at it for a long time, but was helpless. Half of that thing was sealed in Yun Nuoshing's soul, and the other half was sealed in his shadow. Even though he was an emperor god, he had never seen such a seal before. He tried to use energy to break the seal, but Yun Nuoshing felt that the slumbering chaos in his body seemed to have become active. He quickly stopped the mountain emperor. Maybe an expert of that level can help you solve it. In the end, the mountain emperor could only say this helplessly. That level. Yun Nuoshing and the others immediately understood what level it was. They couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Yun Nuoshing was even more disheartened. It seemed like he could only wait until he saw Xianyin, but he didn't even know where Xianyin was. Go back and rest for a day. Understand it well. I'll get someone to bring you to the secret realm tomorrow. After sitting for a while, the mountain emperor said, everyone understood that they had been here for a year. They stood up and bowed to the mountain emperor, then walked out of the hall. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.